Welcome to another edition of AV Rant. I'm Tom Andry, and I'm here with.
Rob H. This is AV Rant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered, and everything's back to normal. Yeah, we're
No,
we're on the correct day. We have lots of questions.
I
Might
have to get up at like
probably not get through all of them.
6:30 in the morning, so
Ah,
Mr. Tom's not too happy about that little thing. I was barely crawled out of bed at 10 today, or I actually woke up at 7, but
okay.
I lounged around the house not wanting to go to work because I didn't have to. I didn't want to, and I really didn't want to, but I had to make money. So
Well, I appreciate that people appreciated our train wreck of a podcast video last week. So
did
got
people
got a few
comment on
comments
it?
on
I
that.
didn't notice. Did people
I
comment on it?
mostly on Twitter. So that
Ah,
was fun. Video should be working. I see recording lights going and numbers progressing sequentially. So it looks like things got sorted. Had to
we'll
download
see.
the correct version of Manycam that will work with everything that has been updated. So
We will
that was the problem
see.
last week.
I
We
don't
we
know.
shall see. Yes.
Not sure. Okay, this thing says it's recording. We will
Yeah.
see
No. No.
what
No.
we will see. All right. This is AV Rant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. Get your questions answered. All you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at what? At question at avrant.com. Boy, my brain shut off, like completely shut down. I was like, oh look, the light thing's a little bent. I should do something about that.
Yeah.
A little umbrella for the light thingy is bent. I should, and then I was gone.
Distraction.
Email us at question at avrant.com. You go to www.avrant.com and leave us a comment there. Though not right now because the website's down.
Yeah.
All right. Somebody in internet land needs to explain this to me. Okay. So Clint from old school AV Rant, Audioholics, who's no longer there anymore, he hosts this podcast. That's one of the costs that is not accrued upon us or anybody else because he hosts the podcast. I don't have to go to HostGator or whatever, the one that has Danica, what's her name, whatever. I don't do any of that. I don't pay for that.
GoDaddy.
Yeah, go there. I don't do any of those things, right? So he hosts it for free, but all the time we get these messages about bandwidth exceeded. He's like, "What are you uploading?" I'm like, "Dude, nothing. I have literally uploaded nothing to this website in months." But we get these bandwidth exceeded limits where we're like, I don't know what could possibly be downloaded from our website because there's nothing there. The podcast is hosted at Libsyn, so that
Right.
streams through them. The image that you see on every single podcast post is the same image. I just go and grab it again. So
Right. Right.
it's not taking up any more
And
space
it's like
anywhere.
60 kilobytes.
I
So
know it's not huge. And we're like exceeding like 77 gigs a month. Like, what is happening? So
hmm.
there's a non-zero chance that we've been hacked in some way. We're like spewing porn or something somewhere. I have no idea how
Well,
that could
be
possibly
more than
happen.
7 gigs if it were that. But
Well, one would think. So I don't know. If somebody out there has an idea of how this could possibly be fixed, and
hmm.
you could convince us that you're not going to just completely hack our website if I give you access to it, I will give you access to it and you could fix it, like straight up fix it. And while we're doing, we do a complete site redesign too, because it is I want to completely change the website. Haven't had any time to do that. All right. You can also contact us on Facebook at facebook.com/AVRant podcast. youtube.com/c/AVRant. If you want to contact us directly, you can contact Rob at AVRant.com. His Twitter is at First Reflect. I'm Tom at AVRant.com. My Twitter is at AVRent_Tom. And we have our producer, Austin, who takes care of all of our videos, except for
Mhm.
last week, which was a train wreck. And also helps put together the question list. You can contact him at Aus10, that's his Twitter, at Aus10TEN Pond. He has his own podcast, We Watch Movies podcast. It's a podcast about evaluating YouTubers' comments, giving them ratings from 1 to 5.
Hmm.
So they
Not
take
just thumbs up or thumbs down.
no
1 to 5.
1 to 5. So if you ever post on YouTube and some random podcast where we
Rates
watch
you.
underneath like replies to your post and just says 2.2.5 stars, that's them. And they talk about it on the podcast, so you
Hmm.
can talk about why they gave you your rating for that. So it's not compelling content, so to speak, but it's certainly pedantic. There's lots of grammatical loss of stars. Like, oh,
Yeah, I'm on board with that.
you didn't capitalize your sentence.
In actual seriousness, they reviewed Wonder Woman on their most recent episode.
Yeah.
And they gave Suicide Squad more stars than Wonder Woman. So that's, if you want to find out why, how that could happen. And hey, I was a bit of a Suicide Squad apologist myself. I really didn't think it was nearly as bad as the critics said. But
Suicide Squad?
Wonder Woman is easily better. So.
Like on...
But well, there you go. So that's you
quite
gotta,
literally
you gotta
every level. I think it's better. Okay, Austin, we're gonna have to talk about that. I did watch John Wick 2 last night.
Okay.
And I was a big fan of the John Wick 1, but John Wick 2 was less of a fan.
I felt the same way.
I'm gonna see it again. I'm gonna give it another go. But I felt like they just phoned it in. Like the plot wise.
I don't feel phoned in, but I mean, they chose a direction and they went that way, and I wasn't a huge fan of the direction they went. So that's not phoning it in, but it's
I felt they phoned in the plot. I was like, okay, this has happened. Now this is going to happen. Now this is going to happen. And this is going to happen. And I basically within 2 minutes of the credits finishing at the very beginning, I knew everything that was going to happen in that movie. Now it was always fun to see him kill people in new and interesting ways, but. In reality, I mean, come on. How many times can this guy just get shot and just shrug it off? I mean,
that was a bit much. And like getting hit by cars and...
Oh, yeah. I'm going to get run over I'm going to fall out of a car.
I'm going to have my legs swept out from under me by a vehicle and then get up and walk away. That's in real life, you got at least a twisted ankle, all right?
Yeah.
I will believe nothing less than a twisted ankle from having your legs swept out from under you by a car coming at you at full speed.
Right.
That's yeah.
I don't mind that suspension of disbelief, but come on. I mean, the first movie had a very simple but very great plot. You're like, I am on board with this from like the very first moment of that movie. I am on board. And it took you logically all the way through. This one I was like, okay, he's supposed to be really smart, right? I mean, because he doesn't see any of this stuff coming, because I see it coming, because apparently I've seen movies before and John Wick's too busy killing people to see movies. All right. In the news. We briefly mentioned it last week, but SVS has created a free ceiling mount insert solution for their prime elevation speakers for an easier and more secure ceiling installation. It's free. They'll just send it to you if you already have the speakers.
That's what they've said. I mean, if you are purchasing prime elevation speakers right now, there's a little drop-down menu to either add them if you want them, or you don't have to take them, but there's no extra charge if you add them. And then they said it's a free upgrade on their Facebook page. So my assumption, I mean, SVS takes care of their customers. So my assumption is if this is something you need, you give them a call, say, hey, I bought the Prime Elevations before this little insert was available. I'm fairly certain they'll send them to you. That's not the type of thing they would.
They don't want people speakers falling off their ceilings.
That would also be a very good idea. Yeah.
Via Tate, one of our listeners, Pioneers has started refreshing their regular and elite lines of AV receivers. Probably look a lot like Onkyo receivers at this point, but go on. It's notable that they're mentioning HDR10 and Dolby Vision pass-through support out of the box without the need for a future firmware update. The $480 5.1 VSX 832 also mentions 3.1.2 Atmos support. 3.1.2 Atmos support, although that is via a future firmware update. Also via future firmware is a Chromecast built in. Yeah. Dude, literally must be the cheapest licensing in the history of the planet. The device itself, the plastic device, costs
it's $35.
Yeah. I mean, how much must they pay per unit to put Chromecast in there? I don't think it's
a whole lot of processing, and if you already have Wi-Fi, which all receivers these days do, so yeah, it can't be too much extra.
Can't be that expensive. But you know what? It's a good idea because Chromecast is pretty good. Pretty nice.
Yeah, Onkyo and Pioneer, we're both seeing Chromecast built in going in there, and they're both supporting this 3.1.2 version of Atmos, including they have like 3.1.2 Atmos with virtualized surround speakers. That's like a thing now. So
see, I feel like that's a sound bar solution. You know what I mean? It's like a sound bar that has some upward firing Atmos garbage in there, and that's what that mode is for. It's for that, and for that, you know what? I'm kind of okay with that. but don't tell me that you're going to buy 3 speakers and put two of them on your ceiling. 5 speakers, put 2 of them on your ceilings and 3 up front. And that's all you're going to have, because I don't believe you're a real person. You're just a troll.
But the main thing to me is Dolby Vision out of the box.
Right.
Den and Marant's future firmware update. Yamaha, Onkyo, Pioneer so far out of the box support. So for whatever reason, they're ahead on that front.
God, are the receivers coming out slightly later than the Denons and Marant's ones? Because that would be...
Not really.
All right. An Austrian company called Rebeat has filed a patent for HD vinyl with 30% more capacity and 30% greater dynamic range. Yet the records produced by this method will still play on all existing turntables. They create a 3D topographical map and use a femto laser to directly cut the metal stamper. They claim it will reduce stamper production costs while being more environmentally friendly as well.
Yeah.
They call it whatever they want, dude. I mean, come on. It's not
HD vinyl. I laugh at the fact a little bit because so vinyl is an old format.
I could get behind iVinyl.
Vinyl is clearly an old format. HD is now like an old thing that used to mean new and fancy. Like everything was being called HD at one point. Now we've moved on to 4K and Ultra HD. So I find it funny that it's like HD vinyl because I mean obviously they're saying HD audio in that, but I get a kick out of that.
Yeah, and I got a real like this is such a vinyl is not as huge as everybody. A lot of people talking about it, but I think it's not as big.
Well, see, what they love are the double-digit gains every year.
Oh, right.
That's what they love. Now, if you're starting from
0.001% to
3 people and you have double-digit percentage gains, it's not actually that many people, but they love to talk about it. They're both a resurgence.
Right. That's fine. You know what? But okay. It's like, okay, for me, this is like taking and putting an automatic transmission in like a 70s like Mustang or something like that. The people want the Mustang because that's a vintage car. They want it vintage. They want it the way it was. They don't want you to come along and then put AC in it or whatever. I don't know what Mustangs had back then. They don't want you to go along and update it. That's not what they want. They want that vintage thing, and I think that's what people want about vinyl as well. I might be wrong. There is definitely a subset of people out there who are like, and I think the vinyl people who are real hardcore vinyl fans would go, totally right, Tom. They're posers who aren't really, who are only into this because everybody's talking about it. So they buy themselves a turntable with money they're not spending on their children because they don't have any, and money they're not spending on facial products because they got beards and man buns. And then they're going out there, they're buying them. Oh, HD vinyl must be better, and they're buying it. I think real vinyl people are like, oh, come on. Nah.
To me, it's a more precisely cut stamper, so it makes sense.
But every time I understand
that's great.
Every time you play the thing, it degrades anyway. So whatever. All right, breaking news from Antoine. Epson is about to take Optima's recent affordable 4K HDR projector announcements lying down. They just announced their home cinema 4000, priced at $2,200. Their panels are still 1080p and wobbled for 4K resolution support. The HDR 10 with 100% of DCI P3 color are supported, 2200 lumens. The big difference is a fully motorized lens. Right, so it's got zoom, focus, and lens shift with 10, count them, 10 memory slots. Why in God's green earth would you need 10? But anyways, plus the range of that lens is much larger than Optimus with a 2.1 times zoom and a plus or minus 96% vertical and plus or minus 47% horizontal lens shift. I do not know why you need 10, but if you can put 10 in something, I see why they want to do it. So whatever.
Well, 2.35 to 1, 2.39 to 1, 2.40 to 1, 16 by 9, 4 by 3. That's at least 5.
Shut up. All right, some comments real quick here. Jackson heard my comment last week about preferring Pro Tools over Audacity, but opting for Audacity because it's free and I'm cheap and the podcast doesn't make any money. Jackson wanted to recommend an audio editing program called Reaper. He says it's as powerful as Pro Tools and easier to use than Audacity, but only costs $60. Let me tell you something about being easier to use than Audacity. I've been using Audacity for 10 years.
Yeah. That's the thing. You're used to it. It might not be as easy if it was like day one, both of them, but if you've got
if I was going from Pro Tools to Reaper, I think it would be. Anyways, Jackson, thank you. I have do not do the thing I just did. All right. I have downloaded it and it is currently recording this audio.
Right.
And I'm using an FX thing to do the compression in real time rather than compressing it afterwards, which takes time out of my day. So there's something that it's doing. I mean, I really don't need Pro Tools because I'm not doing all this stuff, but we'll see how this works out.
Yeah.
I'm for this. I'm for this. So yeah. And thank you, Jackson. And he says it's only cost $60, but he said that there was like an unlimited trial, but they do say it's a 30-day trial.
He was there's a trial. He was saying it's not feature stripped in any way. Like, you know how some trial software.
That's the unlimited. Yeah. Unlimited, not unlimited time. All right. So, anyways,
correct.
It's a 30-day trial. So I've had it for basically since I got this guy's email. So it's probably about a week, and I've tinkered around with it a little bit, watched a couple of videos, and I'm trying to figure it out. So I'll have to unlearn some muscle memory, like with Audacity, you press the space bar to start and stop your recording or whatever. This one, when you're recording, if you press the space bar, it does something weird about saving. I'm like, oh, stop what you're doing. So I have to unlearn that. Earl thanked us for our XLR cable suggestions last week. He wanted to correct us that Macintosh is no longer part of D&M Group. They were sold off to an Italian company called Fine Sounds in 2012. And then in 2014, the Macintosh Group was formed, and that now includes the brands Macintosh Labs, Audio Research, Prima, Sons Faber, Sumiko, and Wadia. Just so we know. Actually, dude, I think if you go back in the podcast, we did report on that because it sounds so familiar.
I didn't remember it, so that's
I didn't remember it either.
Good reminder for me.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, that particular pre-pro is still a Marantz 8802A. Yeah. They moved some of the ports around on the back, so it's not the exact thing where you can just look at the back panels and go, oh, those are identical. They moved, but if you look at the ports that are present, they're all exactly the same number, the same configuration. They moved some of them slightly on the back panel, so it wasn't. But anyway, that's neither here nor there.
But he's right. They are absolutely right. They're part of another group. And if I seem to remember that it was like an enthusiast group that got together and bought Macintosh and all these other brands. So I might be remembering that incorrectly. But so yes, they're not part of D&M anymore. But okay, apparently they're still pretty close. They're kind of tight. All right. Tate, these are our questions from. I got a couple left over from last week because we meandered too much. Tate first wanted to let us know that he's 99% blind. You can detect light versus dark, but that is all absolutely no shapes. For the rest of his family, though, he appreciated our previous advice about what TV to buy for his living room, where all the seats are off to either side and no one is actually sitting directly in front of the TV. He found a heavily discounted LG B6 OLED, and he's very happy with that purchase. Great.
Oh, I would be happy also.
I would be. You could buy one for me while you're at it. I would have no place to put something like that or any other display. As a matter of fact, I've got little. Anyways, he's been considering a new AV receiver, and it's been a little unclear to him as to why the prices are so significantly different between some of the models. The Denon X4300H, for example, is $500 more than the X3300W. Why? Even more confusing are the Marantz SR6011 versus the 7011. The features and capabilities seem almost identical. Is there some huge sonic difference to justify the SR7011's higher price? Now, I did not look up any of these receivers, but let me just say, as a general rule, when you go up in price on receivers, or you go up in levels of receivers, at the very bottom, you're going to see huge differences in the prices. The feature sets, the number of speakers, the number of watts, the number of the processing, the everything, inputs, outputs, zones, all that stuff jumps up. But once you get towards the top end, those differences are like minimal. And a lot of times what it comes down to, and this used to happen all the time, is the top end one, or the one that's like $5,000 or $1,000 more than the one that's below it. The difference is really installer features. Not always.
That's often, sometimes.
But they're installer features. Like, what is that, Tom? Well, more zones, RS-232 control, IR inputs and outputs and that sort of stuff, so you can wire it directly with your infrared stuff.
The codes for something like Control 4 or Crestron or AMX are already built in.
Right. These are in dealer options, and the dealers want those options for custom installs. So they're buying something that the customer knows, and they're getting these other features. What's the other one I'm thinking? Not HDMI.
Base T?
That's the one, HD base T. You see that, you're like, ah, dealer, because that no one needs that unless they have their receiver at one end of their McMansion and their display at the other end of their McMansion. So, or they have them all over the place. So a lot of times this is it. And you might look at it and say, I don't see any difference. Well, those differences are not so visible to you. There'll be some wattage increases. There may be one or two more outputs, maybe like a 7.1 channel inputs or something like that that might show up. But as a general rule, when you get to the top here, we're looking at dealer stuff.
So these ones specifically, just to get into them, the X4300H and the X3300W have some pretty significant differences. So the $500 difference in price is pretty well justified. The easiest one to see is that the X3300W has 7 amplifiers built into it, and it tops out at 7 speakers. So the most you can do is 7.2 or 5.2.2 if you're setting it up for Atmos or DTS:X. Meanwhile, the X4300H has 9 amplifiers built in, but it can process 11 speakers. So it can do a full 7.2.4 Atmos setup. That's a pretty big difference, maxing out at 5.2.2 versus 7.2.4. Also, the X4300H supports HEOS built in. That's their wireless whole house audio solution. The X3300W doesn't. The X4300H can support Oro 3D audio. It's a $200 extra fee to upgrade to that, but it's capable of doing it. The X3300W isn't. So yeah, those are some pretty major feature differences. Even just going from the 7 amps to the 9 amps, you can kind of understand where the $500 price gap came in. But they use the same level of Odyssey, multi-EQ XT32 with sub-EQ HT. So that if that's the key feature you're focusing in on, then
that's the other thing too. You may a lot of times these differences in prices are for things you don't care about.
Exactly.
And
if you're not going to run 9 or 11 speakers, then if you know you're going to stop at 7, then for sure. And then over on the Marantz side, I agree. The SR6011 and 7011 feature sets are really close. Both have 9 amps built in. Both can process 11 speakers. Both have multi-EQ XT32 with sub-EQ HT. Here are the differences. The 7011, again, has HEOS built in. The 6011 doesn't. The 7011 can do Oro 3D if you want to pay the $200 upgrade fee. The 6011 cannot. And the 7011 has a full display on its front panel. It's hidden behind a flap, but it has a full display. The 6011 only has the small little porthole display. That bothers some people. And then there's a slight upgrade to the amount of watts in the amplifiers, but you're very much correct. To me, the SR6011, if you don't care about HEOS built in and you don't care about Oro 3D, that is the value champion, because if you want 9 or 11 speaker Atmos, you can get it for the lowest price with the SR6011 from Marantz. So it's subtle differences there, but there are genuine differences that explain the difference in cost.
Right. So he's concerned about the AV receiver having enough power. He uses DefTech 8060 towers with an 8060 center. He's been using the subs that are built into the towers. They have their own amplifiers, so they can be fed by the subwoofer output of the receiver. His living room is wide open. On its own, it's about 19 feet wide and 14 feet long, but it's completely open to the left to the hallway or foyer, and completely open at the back for the dining room and kitchen. The ceilings are also 12 feet high. On the right are 3 huge windows. So it's open on the left, windows on the right. The seats are about 13 feet from the TV. So how important for him is it to have a lot of wattage from his receiver? And should that be a big concern when he's making this choice? You're seeing 13 feet from your speakers. That's literally the only thing in all of that made any difference.
Yeah, roughly 4 meters.
Yeah, that made any difference for how much watts you need. The question you have is how loud are you trying to play it? Number one. And how far away from your how efficient are your speakers, and how far away do you sit? So the 3 things that you need to know about that.
So those DefTechs are quite efficient. They're 92 dB per watt per meter.
Yeah.
So they're quite, they're not Klipsch efficient, but they're quite efficient. And you're sitting roughly 4 meters away. So take 92, subtract, let's be conservative, subtract 8 decibels from that, 4 decibels for every doubling of distance, because you're in a big room, so you're not having quite as much reflection gain as some smaller rooms. So let's subtract 8 from that, so that
86.
84. 84, right? Let's call it 85 because that makes the math super easy, all right? So with 1 watt, you're getting about 85 decibels of output from where you're sitting. So for average reference volume levels, you need 1 watt per speaker. It's probably doable. Multiply that by 10 and you're up to 95 watts. So 10 watts, 95 decibels. And to hit full peak reference volume, multiply by 10 again, 100 watts will get you full peak 105 decibel peaks from your 4-meter seating distance.
Even make receivers anymore that don't go to 100
Don't go to 100 watts. Yeah, there's I've seen, some of the entry level ones are, 70 or 80 watts per channel.
But they could still put out 100 watts if they absolutely had.
All the ones you mentioned, the X3300W on up, 100 watts per channel easily, and that's sustained power.
Right.
So you only need 100 watts for a momentary peak of 105. Right. You need 1 watt most of the time. That's what you need. It can deliver 1 watt from any receiver.
Times 7. You need 7 watts.
That's right.
If all of the speakers play at the same time.
1 watt per channel, yeah. Most of the time. And a good amount of the time, you might be needing 10, even 20 watts. So.
Well, yeah. Like an external amp for that.
For the higher frequencies, you're getting the direct sound. You're getting the sound that made a straight line from the speaker to you. So really all that matters is the distance. It's the bass that becomes, the wavelengths are longer than the dimensions of your room. Even in your wide open room, it's still longer than the dimensions of your room. So that's where it really matters about the volume of your room, the cubic feet of air in your room. It's in the bass. You're using these built-in subwoofers that are built into the towers in your center speaker. They have their own separate amplifiers. If we were saying, would those be our number one choice for this volume of air, us being the way that we are and trying to fully pressurize things, we'd suggest larger, more powerful subwoofers. However, that still has no impact on your mid-range and treble.
Right.
Because you've got this separate amplifier powering your subs. So you are good to go as far as powering your speakers with an AV receiver.
Yes. All right, let's move on. Who was that? That was Tate, right?
That was, yes.
All right. So we're going to keep with the T's and go to Ted. Ted says, since his room is so small, when he upgrades to Atmos, is 5.2.2 the way to go. He does have his tiered seating set up with a back row right up against the back wall, and the front row is only about 4 feet in front of that. He liked as good an Atmos experience for both rows as possible. Where should he place the overhead speakers? Yeah. So yeah, 5.2.2. You definitely don't want to put any speakers behind you. I mean, because you can't, because it'll hit people in the back of the head, like quite literally, since they're sitting on the back wall. I would put the speakers sort of like basically right above the back row where the back row sits, not the back of the couch, but kind of like right over the heads. Maybe cheat them forward just a little bit.
In other words, just a little bit behind the front row.
Yeah,
just a little bit behind the front row.
And I think that's you could call them top middles.
You call them top middles. That's
and then
right.
you do some front heights.
Yeah, front heights up, high up on your front wall. He's already got these wall-mounted front speakers, huge ones from Legacy, but awesome. So these wall-mounted front speakers. So we're talking about 2 more wall-mounted speakers. The prime elevations could work really nicely here because they are automatically angled down, but high up on your front wall, angled down. Call those front heights, and then 2 in-ceiling or on-ceiling speakers aiming straight down, just slightly behind your front row of seats. Call them top middles. But what we're suggesting is 5.2.4. To me, it's if you're doing this and you're saying Atmos is a key thing I'm trying to do, I always suggest 9 speakers minimum, 5.2.4 minimum. The 5.2.2, you don't get any panning effects overhead front to back.
Right.
You miss out on that.
So wherever his speakers end up being placed, should he hire someone to run the wires, or is it fairly easy to DIY? And would 16 gauge in-wall speaker wire be okay? Is this in the basement?
No, this is a top floor.
If you can get into the attic, this is not hard to do.
Right.
That's the hardest part, is just getting into the attic and getting access to everything. So the question you have, is this difficult? It's technically not, as long as you have access to everything that you need to have access to. So wherever your receiver is, you need to run speaker wire through the wall, up the wall, into the attic, and back out again. That means that the top of that wall, you need to have enough access for you to get a drill in there and drill a hole so that you can get the speaker wire out. And then you just run it across your ceiling to wherever your speaker is going to be, and then that's pretty much it. I mean, it's not rocket surgery here. It is really easy. The access is the hard part, and getting up in your attic in, I guess we're in June now, pretty close to July. So that's going to be the hardest part. If you have the access, it's even for somebody who's never done it before, it's probably a 2-hour job.
Yeah, the actual mechanics of doing it not hugely difficult. On the other flip side of that coin is not hugely difficult. So if you were to hire someone to do it, it's not like it's an all-day super expensive job for them. Because if they're experienced doing it, they should be able to bang it out in half an hour.
Right. They're going to charge you a lot more.
Yeah, they're going to charge you.
Yeah. But, and 16 gauge wire is fine.
Absolutely, especially in a small room in this.
Yeah.
None of your distances are going to be greater than 50 feet, and we're talking Atmos speakers, so absolutely fine to go 16 in-wall wire for that.
So his Power Sound Audio 15V subwoofers are sitting directly on his carpet. He's getting noticeable energy going through his floor to the room below. What would we recommend for isolation in the subs? Well, lots of mouse pads is what Rob's going to say, because Rob's a crazy person.
You could. You could, although I don't know. A lot of mouse pads might shift around. An interesting thing to know about the 15V, it is a down-firing sub, so that means it has to be elevated somewhat and have a gap underneath it for the air to escape, because the thing is firing down. So it actually is on like feet. It's on 4 feet, rather than just having a flat bottom.
You could use the same thing I use, which is the SVS sound path isolation.
I don't know if they have threaded inserts on the bottom of the feet.
How can they not have threaded inserts?
Because it's just like corners. The feet are just like corners. I don't know. I haven't looked at the
right now.
I know. I haven't seen the bottom of the 15Vs.
I have to do this over my microphone. I'm sorry for everybody's watching this, but I can't believe that this is the case.
But I wanted to explain a little bit about, he's saying got a carpeted floor, probably has a carpet pad. Why would you still be getting this mechanical vibrational transfer of energy into the floor? Well, it's because we're talking about pounds per square inch.
Yeah.
That's the thing we need to look at. And when you have feet, you have many fewer square inches over which that force is spread, right? You are essentially taking the downward force, the weight of the subwoofer, and channeling it all into 4 points, or in this case, it's like edges, but 4 smaller areas, surface areas. So you have fewer square inches, same number of pounds, so pounds per square inch. Higher. It means it's crushing that carpet pad and making physical contact with the subfloor below, vibrating that subfloor. So what you really want to do, the whole reason putting something squishy underneath it works, first of all, the squishy thing is damping. It's turning some of that physical vibration into heat and dissipating the energy that way. It's also spreading out the force. That's what you're doing. So same number of pounds, but now more square feet, or square inches. So pounds per square inches goes down, that force. So that's what we're trying to do. Spread it out and damp it so that the movement that does get in there turns into heat. The classic answer would have been the Auralex, in your case, great grandma, because the size of that subwoofer is so large it wouldn't fit onto the normal sized grandma riser pad. You'd have to go with the great grandma, but they are crazy overpriced, $100 each now, which is stupid.
It's a piece of $60 not that long ago.
Exactly, it's a piece.
I thought that was overpriced. To be honest,
it's a piece of MDF with some carpet over it and some foam underneath. All right, and then now they're charging $100 for that. So that's ridiculous. So Tom is right. The sound path isolation feet from SVS, very good solution, $50. Normally would screw into the bottom of most subwoofers, but I don't know. Have you found if they have threaded inserts under there?
Does not. I can't tell. There's
really
no picture of the bottom of it. Doesn't look like it though.
No, because it's like these edges.
It must have some sort of rubber down there. So what is it? It can't just be.
No, it's just the cabinet. The cabinet is just extended that way down.
Something down there, though.
There's nothing down there.
It's
Power Sound Audio, dude. They just cut a piece of MDF on their CNC machine and call it a day. So
I can't find anything in there. I've got the user manual open and everything.
So basically what I'm going to suggest to you, there's a company called Pile Audio. They make a lot of pro audio equipment. Well, they're now making subwoofer isolation risers that are essentially the same thing as the Auralex Grandma, except it's $45 for the size that'll fit nicely under yours. And actually, the dimensions are almost perfect for the 15V from Power Sound Audio. I think it's like an inch wider than your sub is wide, and it's the same length. So it actually fit really nicely, $45, Pile subwoofer isolation stabilizer. That's what you can look up. We'll have the link for that on avrant.com. Once the site is back up and running. But in the show notes. But yeah, Amazon.
Literally got an email 2 minutes ago from somebody telling me my site was down.
That's right.
I'm like, it flashed up while I was talking. I was like, oh, it's distracting. Thank you.
Amazon Pile subwoofer isolation stabilizer. Pick the correct size, $45, and you're off to the races. So you can make your own. You can make your own for even cheaper. But if you just want to buy something and have it arrive tomorrow, $45, not so
I
bad.
love Oralex, but come on, man, $100 for that thing? That's
nuts now.
That's ridiculous. Yeah, build your own. It's just that.
Right.
It's just that foam stuff. That packing foam basically is
Pretty
all
much.
it is. You know, and a little piece
anything
of,
squishy,
just
or you
glue
could
it.
you could take a piece of plywood and put the SVS subwoofer isolation feet into that. Although that's more expensive, so why would you do that?
All right.
Yeah.
Anyways, listen to how it works out for you. Chris got his new Onkyo RZ1 1100 11. I don't know how to say this thing. RZ 1100 AV receiver. After running ACU EQ, he still has the option to enable manual equalizer settings. He also gets the option to add DSP sound modes on top of the Dolby Surround Up mixer. So although so far, he's just preferred the vanilla Dolby Surround setting.
Yeah.
Which is probably for the best. He's curious about the manual EQ options, though, and wants to know how he should go about tuning them with up to 9 bands of EQ for each speaker channel and 5 EQ bands for the subwoofers. Is this almost like getting a mini DSP for free? Can other receiver brands, Denon and Marantz in particular, do the same sort of thing after running their version of auto setup? Many receivers do have manual EQ options on there. They
yes, but it typically does deactivate the auto EQ thing.
Yeah. So is this like a mini DSP? It's really kind of not. Mini DSP is quite a bit more powerful, and you can just you can use it with Room EQ Wizard and just kind of load up your curve, and it'll do. This is going to require you to first figure out your curve, whatever that's going to be, and then put in these settings. And many times how granular the controls are is the big difference between something like this and something like the mini DSP. And the mini DSP is very granular. This is going to be a lot more clunky.
Yeah, it's much closer to like your old school graphic EQ from way back in the day. Yamaha actually gives you a parametric EQ, which is essentially the same type of filter that a mini DSP has. So Yamaha is closer, but in Yamaha's case, they still don't let you have completely free range over what frequency the parametric EQ is centered on. So the mini DSP is still more powerful than what's built into the Yamaha. This is similar to what Denon and Marantz offer. Denon and Marantz also offer a manual graphic EQ, essentially. But in Denon and Marantz's case, that automatically turns off Odyssey if you put on the manual EQ, whereas this Onkyo, you can sort of tune on top of what ACU EQ did.
Right.
So if this is a matter of, you're saying how should you make use of this? Well, you could measure. You could get a measurement microphone, measure in Room EQ Wizard after having run ACU EQ. If what you're going for is a straight line and you notice there is a hump or a dip that happens to line up with one of these 9 bands that's already there, or one of the 5 bands in the subwoofer output, you could make an adjustment there. More likely, though, this is a use it sparingly and perhaps to taste. Maybe you want voices accentuated a little bit more, or consonant sounds to be a little bit louder or softer if you're hearing some sibilance. So maybe you adjust the 4 kilohertz band a little bit, the 2 kilohertz band, something like that. But I would use this quite sparingly. And yeah, you could absolutely measure, but you're limited by these preset bands where these EQ filters fall in the Onkyo there.
So there's a feature to activate a THX Cinema filter. Is that essentially just another DSP listening mode? Should it be turned on or off? I did a little research into this, and based on the manual, if you look up cinema, like in the manual, if you do a search for it, it shows up one time, and it's in relation to a THX Cinema mode or something. And basically, it is exactly like a Dolby
Surround. It's a listening mode.
It takes and expands. It's supposed to expand the sound to make it sound more like you're in a real theater.
Yeah, I think how he wound up with the phrase THX Cinema filter is because within the settings menu, there's all the little sub-menus, and there is a THX sub-menu, and directly below that is a filter menu. And I think maybe, especially if you're reading it in the manual, it looks like it's just THX filter.
Right.
Like that's how it shows up when you're reading it. They're two sort of separate things. So THX Cinema is a listening mode. It is similar to a DSP mode. It's something that takes 5.1 content and expands it to 7.1. So that's one thing that it's doing, and it also applies THX's own sort of tuning to the thing. Where it is beneficial in this Onkyo is that Onkyo doesn't provide something that is akin to a feature we like in Odyssey that's called dynamic EQ.
Right.
What dynamic EQ does is if you are listening at a volume level that is below reference volume, and because of our non-linear human hearing, some of the sounds you're supposed to hear might become inaudible or just unbalanced. They don't seem as loud as they ought to, not because they aren't technically as loud as they should be, but because our ears don't hear it that way once you're below reference volume. Well, Odyssey Dynamic EQ looks at how low you've turned the volume and sort of compensates for that. So it'll boost some of the bass to keep it audible, that type of thing. THX has a similar thing that they call Loudness Plus. So that's kind of the feature but it's only active when you're using a THX listening mode.
Right.
So you can only do THX Loudness Plus when you're using a THX listening mode. That's where that might be beneficial to you. If you listen all the time at -20 on the volume dial, you might want to use THX Loudness Plus. The filter thing that came right after that in the menu is essentially there for... it gives you 3 different bands to try and compensate for standing waves. So it's an additional separate EQ, but it's like system-wide. So they give you 3 additional bands where you can try and tame like a really big peak that might be in your bass frequency response. So it isn't technically part of THX; it's separate from that, but it did show up right beside it when you're reading the manual. So I think that's where that came from.
Right. So he's using Bose Optimus speakers as his front height and top middle speakers. They're mounted on the walls, not the middle speakers are anyways not on the ceiling, but they're way high up, basically right against the ceiling. He did some experimentation with the setup, and he found that if he angled the speakers upwards so that they were aimed at the ceiling rather than down at the seats, he then set them as Dolby enabled upward firing speakers in his Onkyo, he actually found the sound to be noticeably more pinpoint precise. Have you ever considered something like this, and why would it sound so different versus just pointing them at the seats and setting them as normal front height and top middle speakers? Bose, dude, like for real.
Well, that's one part of it is Bose.
Yeah, Bose is like the height of nonlinearity. They have very much their own sound, and I mean they are. I don't know exactly which. I googled Bose Optimus speakers. I was like, it just comes up with. I don't remember which one he's talking about. So reflected sound has kind of always been their thing. It also makes it sound a little bit more diffuse, which in some cases can make it sound like you know exactly a little bit more where it's coming from as it's bouncing off the ceiling. Could be hitting you more directly than, I mean, a lot of times their tweeters are angled. I don't know if these ones are. They usually are. They're angled off to the side, but by pointing them up, you could be basically pointing them more towards yourself through the reflection. There's a lot of explanations here that could explain this. In the end, I'm glad you tried it, and you should stick with it and not worry about why it works all that much.
There's that. Now, this is actually kind of adding fuel to the fire of my suspicion that what that Dolby-enabled upward firing setting in this is in your AV receiver, not the speakers. But when you say I have Dolby-enabled speakers, we know for a fact that that applies a Dolby EQ to the speaker output. And that EQ is based on their research into human head-related transfer functions, which are the things that let us identify the direction that a sound is coming from based on the outer shape of our ear and our skull and our tops of our shoulders and all that stuff. Our brain uses all of that extra information to tell us that a sound is coming from overhead. A while back, I had the suspicion that even when you use the upward firing drivers and set them up as they say, which is, on top of your regular speakers, but shooting upward, I was like, I don't really know that the sound is reflecting off the ceiling and that's what makes it work. I think it's this curve they're applying that tricks your brain into thinking the sound is coming from overhead. Could be a phase.
They could be doing some
well, it's specifically a head-related transfer function frequency curve. It's supposed to trick your brain into thinking sound is coming from overhead. So if you took a speaker and actually put it up high and then applied the frequency curve to trick your brain into thinking the sound is coming from up high, I'm like, well, maybe that would actually really work, right? Because it's basically it's almost like magnifying the effect of having something originating its sound from above you. It's almost like magnifying that effect. That's a suspicion on my part, but I kind of think maybe that's what's going on. It actually does kind of make me want to try setting my front height and rear height speakers as Dolby enabled to see if that enhances the effect. That's something I could
Sounds like
try.
you got some homework there, Rob.
Yeah, yeah.
So he says his room is a great room. It's wide open. He's been planning on adding a pair of in-ceiling subwoofers. He's been using a pair of Samsung subwoofers. I didn't know Samsung.
Well, sure. They have their home theater in a box systems and that, so it's probably
They aren't cutting it, but the in-ceiling subwoofer plan is obviously more complicated and costly, so it's not something you do right now. He could, however, afford a pair of SVS SB2000s. Not right away, but sooner than the in-ceiling subs. The SB2000s are about as physically large as he can go, though. So considering all that, should he just wait and go with his in-ceiling plan, or would the SB2000 be a better choice? What would we do? I'm going to be honest with you, dude. I have suggested before in-ceiling subwoofers or in-wall subs or in-floor subs before, and they are so often, to me, not worth the cost of them. They're quite a bit more expensive than their brethren that you just stick in the corner of your room.
Yeah, and if it does turn out to be suboptimal placement, you ain't going to do much about it without a whole lot of cost and hassle.
Yeah, and not only, but I think, I mean, the extension usually isn't nearly as good. You don't get as much, sub for your money in that case, unless you're doing something like an infinite baffle sub. But once again, you're stuck at that point with whatever you put up there, and that can be a problem. He didn't really tell us how big this room is, but we gotta assume it's a bazillion.
Yeah, great room, wide open. We can assume it's well above what we would call a medium-sized room.
Right. So, and the SB2000s are not going to be big enough. I mean,
yeah, well, not to pressurize it. I mean, it's not like you're not going to hear bass coming from them. You're going to hear bass notes, but it's not going to fully. You're not going to feel it.
I am unconvinced that any in-ceiling subs that he might add to this room are going to fully pressurize, anyways.
Unless he is talking infinite baffle and he's going for some massive,
18-inch
or 21-inch drivers or something
up in the ceiling. If you're not planning on fully pressurizing anyways, if that's not, and you don't listen that loud, I think I'd be okay with saving the money and going with the SVSs.
Yeah, I mean, the nice thing, again, the thing we love most about SVS is that really great DSP protection, so that turn them up as loud as they go, they'll play as loud as they can, and then just politely refuse to play any louder. They're not going to bottom themselves out. They're not going to damage themselves. So they're a great choice in that respect. Can fully appreciate that, hey, look, you got aesthetics, you got walkways, a sub can only be so big and still be viable. Just if you go into it knowing, hey, I'm not going to feel my entire rib cage moving when the bass hits, all right? I'm not going to get that kind of pressurization. Right. As long as your eyes are open to that, I wouldn't say no. It's just you're not going to fully pressurize. That's all.
So I had a conversation with my son the other day about subwoofers. We talked about on the podcast.
Yeah.
And I said, you feel this the couch move. Well, that's what subwoofers do. So the day they went to the movies with a field trip for their camp or whatever, and they were in reclining seats. They were talking about. I said, were they D-box seats? He goes, I don't know. What's a D-box seat? I'm like, it's a seat that moves, as the movie goes. He goes, oh, we don't need those. We've got subwoofers.
Nice.
Like you're my new favorite son. So one of the other ones was for parts if one of you guys breaks down. So I was extremely pleased.
I never got to tell on the podcast my Wonder Woman D-box story because I was saying Alien Covenant, super disappointing watching that in D-box because the D-box seats barely moved. Wonder Woman had the single stupidest use of D-box I've ever had, which is there is horse riding in that movie and they move the seats like you're on a horse. Kick-clop, kick-clop, kick-clop.
The drinks? You have drinks and popcorn? The things go flying all over the place? That's crazy.
It wasn't that violent, but it's not a funny part of the movie. I about busted out laughing because I'm like, this is the dumbest movement that a seat can do. Try and make you feel like you're riding a horsey.
Not sure that's the dumbest movement, but it's probably up there. All right. Those are the questions that left over from last week, so let's get to this week. Infinite Gary. Of course, has got some questions for us. One of Gary's many setups is a small 2.0 setup on top of a table that he just uses for casual CD playback. Dude, I've got to visit this dude's house sometime. I feel like there's speakers literally everywhere.
Oh, he has mentioned a setup in the bathroom. He has mentioned it in passing. So there are speakers everywhere in this house.
I love having music playing when I'm taking a shower. I'll be honest with you. I do. I love it. If I had a whole house audio, having speakers a zone for my bathroom where I can change the music in my bathroom would be fantastic. So And now that I got Alexa, right? Alexa Echo, I got it for Father's Day. It was on sale for like $40 or something like that. And our Bluetooth speakers all over the house, anyways. So Alexa and I are getting to know each other, kind of working it out. Got some communication issues. I'm not quite sure I speak her language yet. But anyways, Gary, small setup, 2.0, whatever. It's never very loud, and he doesn't have any intention of altering the placement or positioning in any way. At the moment, he's using a pair of Dynaudio 110 bookshelf speakers that are only 34 inches apart. Okay, they're sitting on stands too, it looks like.
Yeah, those isoacoustics.
There's a cool little
isolation
stands.
risers.
Yeah, they look a little big, a little small for these speakers, but whatever. When a pair of speakers are this close together, is there a particular speaker design that's especially good or especially bad? Are there certain dispersion characteristics that would be particularly well suited to having the left and right speakers so close together? Yes. You would want something that had a very beamy tweeter would be nice. It would give you very precise imaging. It's not saying that having good, wide dispersion like normal would be, but as you move further away from this thing, I know you're sitting mostly pretty close, but as you sit further back or further away, your imaging is going to fuzz out a little bit. So having a more precise tweeter, I would think would be a good thing. Something that you could aim towards your face and have it really give you some good, like little electrostatic panels would be nice.
Right. Now, I agree if the situation is you're seated close to in front of these speakers, pretty much stationary. So I'm not sure if this is just a system that's like, it looks like it's maybe in his dining room. So I'm like, is this a system that just is there for the background?
He eats lunch there.
It could be. But but it depends on use case, right? Because, for Gary and for everyone else, if the idea of this system is I just have this set up in a room and it's there in the background and I'm far away from these speakers and moving around, I'm not, sitting and intensely listening to them, then in that case, who cares? You just want wide dispersion so that you hear the music throughout the whole room.
Right. And you basically have a mono source at that point too. So you're not getting stereo. I mean, if these things are 34 inches apart, if you're further than 34 inches away, and you're not right smack dab in between the two of them, how much stereo separation you're getting.
Right. So the idea of the beamy type of tweeter, the highly directional speaker, is if you're in the situation where you are sitting right close to them.
Where you're sitting at a desk.
Yeah,
and there's two speakers there.
And that way, the information that reaches your left ear from the front left speaker is different from the information that reaches your left ear from the front right speaker. That's what gives you the stereo effect, is your left and right ears getting distinct, separate information. So, kind of like headphones. So that's where that comes into play. So, Gary, you can answer for yourself what the situation is, but that would be what you're looking for, depending on how you're using these speakers.
There are some things to think about too, though. And I know he says he's not going to move his speakers, but when you're sitting this close, let's pretend it's an actual desktop setup. Okay,
sure.
There are desktop setups where the speaker itself is sort of angled back a little bit, and the tweeter is on the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
The idea here is that you're going to get a bounce off of the tweeter off of the desk. That's happening, whether you like it or not. So putting the tweeter low and angling it up slightly, you get to control that bounce, because that people who are sitting at a desk are probably sitting, within this particular range, and you want to make sure you can control that bounce. So in your case, you might angle your speakers a little bit towards yourself or something like that. You could do that. If you're looking for good stereo imaging, you could make sure that whatever's between your speaker, like the first reflection point on your desk, has a little damping. I mean, I could literally be, in this case, a mouse pad would be fine. Just make sure that's where your mouse pad is. Something like that. I mean, there's all sorts of designs. Kef, when they make their speakers that are, they have concentric drivers anyways, but some of their highest end, monitors basically are just a single concentric driver within, and it's that whole idea is that it's a really super beamy, and it's going to come, and you're going to get good stereo separation from those speakers. Gary often sees the phrase "good for the price" in speaker reviews, but what does that really mean? Does it mean the speaker isn't actually all that good? You read way too much into that, Gary. Or if it means the speaker is good, but some other more expensive speaker is just better, which more expensive speaker is being used for comparison? Is the phrase only useful if we know what the good for the price speaker is being compared to, so that we can make the same comparisons for ourselves? Gary, I have never, ever seen a good for the price in a professional review that does not mention what price point they're comparing it to. So if you're talking about comments on Amazon do not that's not those aren't reviews. That's nothing. That's garbage. You read those if you're smart, and I know you are. You will read those looking for problems or specific things that people are having that are doing with these things. Like when I read reviews on Amazon, I am filtering through all the people who clearly have never experienced anything but this one thing that they're experiencing, and just get the key pieces of information that I'm looking for. I'm looking for a speaker. People talk about how it's got great bass. I don't care how much bass you think it's got. Shut up. People. It's the best headphones I've ever had. Don't care. This is literally the second pair of headphones you've ever had. Of course, it's better than other ones. That's why you bought them. I'm looking for physical things that are wrong with the case, physical, with like the headphones themselves, how long or how well the cable held up, those sorts of things. That's what I'm looking for with Amazon reviews. With an actual professional review, they're going to say twice the price or 4 times the price. If they say it's 4 times the price, that they're just talking out of their what, because that's like shorthand in audio reviews for I am a unprofessional professional reviewer, because that was the thing that Bose latched onto. For good speakers 4 times the price or something like that, and we don't do that. Professionals reviewers don't do that anymore. They don't say those words. So if they say good for the price, they will tell you the price, and the price is usually double normally. And what they're saying is that they have heard speakers that cost double that sound similarly good to these. Does that make those other speakers bad? Usually not. But that makes these sound, pretty good. And then continue reading, Gary, because after that there'll be the caveats, and they always come. Except the cabinet's not as nice, or it doesn't look as good, or doesn't play as loud, or doesn't have as much bass, or this or that or that. So they will always qualify the statement. Yes, sonically, they do match up well with speakers twice the price. Guess what? That's almost always the case. I hate to break it to you. Any decent speaker will sound very similar.
You can find something that's twice or 4 times the price that sounds about the same. Sure.
About the same. And what's the difference? All sorts of things that are very, very material, and some that aren't. So, this is just one thing that they say, and you're reading just I think you're reading way too much into it.
Well, to me, one way to look at it, there's an alternative phrase that you could use, which is there's room for improvement, but you would have to pay more to get that improvement.
Right.
That's the alternative to good for the price, right? So like I would say the Andrew Jones Pioneer speakers are very, very good for their price.
Yep.
Right? Are there speakers that objectively and subjectively can be a little bit better? Yes. That's what I would say, that yes, there's room for improvement. However, you're not going to find anything that's the same price as the Pioneer Andrew Jones speakers that gives you those improvements. You're going to have to pay more to get those improvements that are small, but perhaps available. So that's how I look at good for the price.
Okay. Bobby, somebody is cooking I'm sorry, Bobby. Somebody's cooking something in my house.
Huh?
Who is baking at 10 o'clock at night? I might be having a stroke. If I'm having a stroke, this is going to be the best podcast ever to begin with. But because they'll definitely be downloaded a whole bunch. But seriously, I'm going insane. Bobby currently has an Epson 8350 projector. He wants to upgrade to a 4K HDR compatible projector like the Epson 5040 UB, but for the time being, he will continue using his 8350. I don't know why we need to know all that, but what else?
Well, it's coming up in the view.
He wants to buy an Ultra HD Blu-ray player right now, though, and he's especially like to listen to the Dolby Atmos soundtracks that are only available on some of the Ultra HD Blu-ray versions. So even though his current projector is not 4K compatible, will he still be able to play the Ultra HD Blu-ray discs and listen to their Atmos soundtracks? What? Yes?
Yes.
Yes? I mean, I can't imagine a situation where that wouldn't be the case, to be honest with you.
Yeah, well, I mean,
especially getting the audio.
It's fair enough, because you're like, hey, if this is a 4K resolution Ultra HD Blu-ray disc, is it possible to connect it to a 1080p television and play it in 1080p? Because
I never thought about it, but when I read the question, I'm like, you know what? It's a good question.
It is a good question.
It seems like the answer should be yes.
Yeah, the answer is yes, thankfully.
Yes.
And there are 2 situations. One, because some people have run into this, almost all, except for the Xbox One S, Ultra HD Blu-ray players give you 2 HDMI outputs, and they'll even label one of them as audio only. So we have run into the situation where someone plugs an Ultra HD Blu-ray player into an AV receiver, and that AV receiver is capable of passing through 4K with HDCP 2.2 copy protection. It's got all the stuff that you're going to need. And then they're connecting that AV receiver to a 1080p display.
Right.
Well, the Ultra HD Blu-ray player first makes the handshake with the AV receiver and says, oh, hey, you can handle HDCP 2.2 and 4K, and tries to send that signal.
Right.
Then it runs into the 1080p TV, and you get the error message from your AV receiver, not from the Ultra HD Blu-ray player, but from the AV receiver telling you, your display is not compatible with HDCP 2.2. I'm not going to pass this video through to you. Right. So that has happened. So the workaround there is you connect the Ultra HD Blu-ray player directly to your display, and you use the audio-only second HDMI output to send audio to that AV receiver. Sometimes you do need that workaround, but that will let you watch an Ultra HD Blu-ray on a 1080p display and still get the Atmos audio. You might not have to, but you might have to. So
I kind of feel like you should be able to do that workaround one time, then go into the settings of the Blu-ray player and say, only put out 1080p or something like that.
Yeah, there usually is a thing in the resolution, because normally it's auto. But sometimes there is the ability to set it to 1080p output. That's all you output.
Then you could just go back and wire it.
Then
normally.
it should probably work. Yeah. But it's just in case. I'm just putting it out there as a just in case, so that you
be prepared to buy an extra HDMI cable. That's what you're saying.
Yeah. But either way, this can be done.
Okay. So what Ultra HD Blu-ray player should he buy? He asks.
Well, the Sony.
Okay. Sorry, is it cheap, right? It's cheap.
Well, it's $270. Yeah. So it's not the cheapest, but first of all, you actually do need the thing where you convert the HDR signal that's on the disc to SDR, to standard dynamic range. You need that. And not all of the Ultra HD Blu-ray players do that particularly well. The Sony does it really well, so that's nice. It also, for sure, can be connected to a 1080p display. The AV Forum's review of it explicitly mentioned that. And actually, the very scenario you're talking about, older display that's 1080p only, but you want to listen to the Atmos soundtracks. He's like, 100% works on the Sony. So all of that conversion for sure works. The price isn't too high. Now, the one thing it lacks is Dolby Vision, but you're only talking about a projector setup, so you're never going to need Dolby Vision. All projectors that can do HDR10. None of them do Dolby Vision. So price, features, excellent performance, and the one feature that it lacks in Dolby Vision you don't need because you've got a projector.
Right. So he sits 11 feet from eyes to screen, but his projector is actually a bit in front of him, so its throw distance from lens to screen is only about 9.5 feet. Mm-hmm. He looked it up, and Epson's site says the largest screen size he can create with that throw distance is a 98-inch diagonal 16:9 image. So this is the Epson he's thinking about buying at a later date.
It actually works for both the 8350 he has now and the 5040 UB. If you put the lens 9.5 feet from the screen, the biggest image you can create is 98 inches diagonal. That's correct.
Move it back. Anyways, he's going to get a new screen, but he's a bit confused about what sizes will work with his throw distance and seating distance. He was considering a 92-inch screen. Isn't that smaller than 98? Sorry.
It is.
But then he started thinking that might be too small. So he was thinking of a 100-inch screen, but if Epson's site is correct, the biggest image he can have is 98 inches. So what do we think? Does he have to go with a 92-inch screen? Should he go for a large screen? With a 100-inch screen work? Wait a second. Let me back this thing up in front of him. So there's look up this largest screen correct with that throw is 98. Okay, yeah. Why can't he back up the projector?
I don't know. I mean, maybe he's already invested in a ceiling mount.
Yeah, got the pole going through a ceiling. There's one other hole in the ceiling.
It'll be a hassle. Oh, I can appreciate that. It can be a hassle to move a ceiling mount. Maybe he's actually got the projector in front of him. And that
does have it in front of him. That's the problem.
Yeah, but I mean, like, on a table in front of him.
Oh, you mean like a table, right?
That could also be the case. It could be something like that. Yeah, I mean, essentially, you have hit the right thing, which is that the largest image you can create with this throw distance that you have now is a 98-inch diagonal 16:9 image. That's the biggest you can get when the lens is 9.5 feet from the screen. Now, you're saying you're 11 feet away, right? So if you went with the 92-inch screen, that's about a 34-degree field of view. Even if you went up to the 98-inch screen, the maximum, and you ordered a custom screen that's exactly 98, you're looking at about a 36-degree field of view. In either case, in my opinion, that's a little on the small side for a projector setup. Even the 36-degree is a little on the small side for my taste, right? So
definitely for my taste. I mean,
honestly, what you need to do is find a way to move the projector back more towards the back wall of the room.
You got two options. You can move the projector back or move yourself forward.
Right, yeah, you can sit closer, sure. Yeah, you can, if that is physically possible.
I would not recommend, I'll be honest with you, I would not recommend getting a custom screen that's exactly 98 inches.
Right.
I would not. First of all, it's going to cost a lot compared to what you can get from that's something that's like a standard size.
Yeah.
And you very well might get 98, but not exactly 98. And then they're going to have a little bit, it's going to be a little under, and the screen image itself is going to be a little under. Yeah, you really got to move this projector. And I'm curious as to why he can't. Now, if it were me and my option was, and I can't move the projector, I can't move me, and I can't do anything, I'm buying the biggest screen that this thing can do without it being custom, which is going to be 92. And I'm going to live with it. That's what I'm going to do.
Oh, it's still a large screen compared
to
any flat panel.
Many inches on all of your friends, and all guys know inches are important. So you will have that to lord over them, and they're all sitting 11 feet away from a 55-inch flat screen. So for them, it's massive and whatever. And, they don't have to know. They don't have to know that. All the guys at AV Rant were like, dude, seriously, like 11 feet. 100 inches, 120 inches.
Like 120 is kind of where I would aim for an 11-foot seating distance. And I'm someone who doesn't want the like 1-to-1 size screen that some people really like.
I know. Yeah, I'm not that big, but I like it.
Yeah, around 120 inches would seem about right to me from 11 feet away. So yeah, if there's a way to physically move your projector back, and then he's got another question coming up that even makes that even more so.
So he says, he'd like to watch both 16:9 and 2.35:1 content. He got a bit confused by how all that works. If he looks up the the image sizes on the chart for the 100-inch screen, it says they will both have the same image width, but the 2.35:1 will be a 95-inch diagonal image, while the 16:9 will be a 100-inch image. He was under the impression that 2.35:1 content should be bigger. So how does he make all of that work? Okay, you don't make any of it work. Okay, the projector you will set it for your size. Okay, Rob's going to tell you. Rob's about to confuse you, so listen to me. Listen to what I'm saying. Do not listen to Rob. He's a crazy person, does crazy things. So
I might go down a small rabbit hole on this one.
You think I'm going to go? I'm going to leave the room while that happens and go get a drink of water and stuff like that. Anyway, you just pretend you have a 100-inch screen, right? Because that's what you're talking about here. So if you have a 100-inch screen, right? With a 16:9, it's going to be sorry, I hit my pop filter there. 95-inch diagonal. Okay, 100-inch.
When it's 2.35:1.
When it's 2.35:1. Okay. But but it's going to be 100 inches diagonal when you have a 16:9 content.
Yeah.
Right? Why? Black bars.
Yes.
You will have black bars on the top and the bottom of 2.35:1. You will have black bars. They are in the content. They are there.
Yeah, just like on your flat panel, right? When
you're
watching a movie on a flat panel, yeah, black bars top and bottom.
You take your flat panel, right? Whatever this is, let's pretend it's 55 inches. Take your 55-inch flat panel, you measure it from corner to corner, it's going to be like 54.5 or something like that. Yeah. And you're going to be angry about doing this, and I'm sorry about that. Then you're going to watch a 2.35:1 image up there. You're going to freeze that image, and you're going to measure the side to side, and it's going to be less than 55 inches. That's all they're saying here. That's all they're saying. Okay. Now Rob's going to do the thing he does.
Yeah. So I agree with you. 2.35:1 content should be the same height as your 16:9 content, but it should be even wider, which would result in the screen being larger for 2.35:1 than it is for 16:9. But that means you have to start with the larger screen size, and then when you're watching 16:9 content, shrink the image, right? That's one way to look at this. This is solution number one.
Right.
So if that's what you
Black
want,
bars on the side.
yeah, if you want your 2.351 content to be the same height as your 16 by 9 content, but even wider, that means you need to buy an even larger screen. If you buy an even larger screen, you need to move your projector even farther back. Because as you move the projector closer to the screen, the maximum image size gets smaller, right? So let's say you started with a 100-inch 16 by 9 screen. And you moved your projector back. In your case, you'd only have to move it back a couple of inches, right? But you did that.
You can't move this projector, but go on.
Yeah, but I'm just saying in this situation, you did that. You moved it back a couple of inches so that it perfectly fills your 100-inch 16 by 9 screen.
Yep.
But now you want to keep that same height and have a screen that's wider than the 100-inch 16 by 9, same height, but wider. You need to make the image bigger. Well, the image of the projector at this point can't get any bigger. You're already maxing it out. So you would have to physically move the projector back. So solution number one is you move the projector physically farther back. You get the screen. You can get a 2.35 to 1 aspect ratio screen if you want to. That is the same height as a 100-inch diagonal 16 by 9, but wider. And then when you are watching 2.35 to 1, you fill the whole width of that screen, and the black bars are still getting projected, but they're physically being projected above and below that 2.35 to 1 screen.
Right.
Then when you watch 16 by 9, you actually zoom the projector in. On the 5040 UB, it's motorized, so that's easy. On your 8350 right now, you'd have to do it manually. But you would zoom it in, so you're actually shrinking the image down. Now the entire height fits within the height of the screen, and you have blank space to the left and right. You have physical blank space on this screen because the screen is now wider.
Those are actual physical black bars because there's no light being projected.
Well, it's not even black bars. It's just...
Well, I mean, that's what black bars are. It's supposed to be no light
that's
being
true,
projected.
yeah.
So they are technically black bars.
Yeah, however black your room is, it's just
that black.
It's just sitting there. Now, solution number two, the only way that you could do this without having to physically zoom your projector and physically move your projector farther back is to put a lens in front of the projector lens. They call it an anamorphic lens. Right. And what it actually does is it stretches the light that's coming out of the projector. It stretches it widthwise, right? So now you still have this screen that's the same height as your 100-inch 16 by 9, but the screen is now physically wider. You put this anamorphic lens in front of your projector, and it stretches the light that comes out of your projector to fill the whole width. You didn't have to move the projector any farther back. You didn't have to play with the zoom on the projector at all. It just stretched it. However, that means you've just geometrically distorted the image. You've taken what was a 16 by 9 and stretched it to be wider. You need video processing to compensate for that. Right. Inside the projector, it first makes everyone tall and skinny. And then when the lens stretches that light widthwise, things go back to looking normal.
If you want to know what that looks like, look at an old Halloween, the first Halloween movie, the very beginning where the credits are rolling and stuff, and the girls are walking. I think Jamie Lee Curtis is one of them. I don't really remember who else is there. It's walking down the street. Everybody's tall and thin.
Tall and skinny, yep.
Basically, they took, and like, I don't know if they probably have fixed this in most recent Blu-ray or whatever editions, but the last time I saw it was probably on VHS, and it was squished.
Yeah, they took a widescreen and squished it into an old 4x3 TV.
4x3 stuff, and that's what it will look like.
That's what it would look like without the anamorphic lens in front.
Yes.
Yeah. Now the 5040 UB has that processing built in. They call it anamorphic stretch mode. So you activate that, and it all works. Your 8350 doesn't have that. So right now, you couldn't even use the anamorphic lens unless you bought an external video processor, which is at least $1,000 and totally not. Well, I guess the HD Fury Integral can actually do it, so $250.
I mean,
totally
you're like leading him way down this rabbit hole too, because the anamorphic lens is way expensive as well.
Yes, a really good anamorphic lens, a really, really good one, is going to be at least $1,500
just for the lens.
Just for the lens.
God
and also,
forbid somebody touch it.
Yeah, now you have another couple of options once you have the lens. You can have the lens in line. You can have the lens in front of the projector all the time. And the 5040 UB has the correct processing so that 2.35 to 1 looks correct. And then when you're watching 16 by 9, it still makes everyone tall and skinny first inside the projector. It actually puts black bars on the left and right of the image, and then the lens stretches that, so you get 16 by 9 on a 2.35 to 1 screen. You can do all that in the 5040 UB. It's all there for you. Some people go to the expense and stuff of putting a sled on the lens so that you can physically slide the anamorphic lens into or out of the light path.
I've seen those, the motorized ones. Like the image go up there, be all weird, and you hear this.
Yeah, and you're looking at $3,500 minimum for a motorized one.
And those slowly come across the screen, and like everybody gets normal. You know, like
everybody
you can see
stretches out.
Yeah.
So that's the rabbit hole we went down. Is the idea of
this? Just buy a 100-inch screen. Yeah. Actually, buy a 120-inch screen and move your projector back and deal with the black bars on the top and bottom of 2.35
but
to 1.
If you do want your 2.35 to 1 to be wider, then it means you have to buy the physically larger screen and you have to move your projector even farther back. That's the end of result.
Often it's the case that it's cheaper to buy 2 screens. Okay, you buy a 16:9, you mount it to your wall. You buy a 2.35 to 1 that's pull down, and you just
or vice versa.
Yep. Probably, I think the 2.35 to 1 pull down probably is a little bit better because it covers a 16:9. Anyways, you pull it down, and then for the times that you're watching that's cheaper than all of this lens garbage that he's talking about. You could buy it. It's just cheaper. Anyway, Steve has noticed that our YouTube videos are preceded by a pre-roll ad. Do these ads actually benefit AVRant or just YouTube? I don't recall ever getting any money for them.
Nothing has arrived in your bank account or a check
Not
in the
that
mail?
I recall, but I get a lot of random emails from YouTube and stuff like that, and Google in general, AdWords, AdSense or whatever, that I have no idea what they're coming from or what it is, and I it's usually pennies or whatever. So, okay. In order for us to schedule videos so that they can come up at a later date so that Austin can go and drop in all of the videos all at once and then have them roll out throughout the week, because that's what he does, we had to have ads. I think the other option is pay them money, and I am not paying them money. Right. So, the coffers are not that full yet. So we allow them to have ads. I chose the least obnoxious ads, I think, which I think is the ones that you can click through like after 5 seconds.
Yeah, they play for 5 seconds minimum, and then you can skip them after that point. I agree. To me, that's the least offensive, because I don't like the ones where the little pop-up comes up at the bottom during the video. I don't like the unskippable ads or the ones that show up in the middle of the video. So, yeah, I think these are the least offensive.
15-second ones are almost bearable, but the 30-second ones are like, oh, no. I mean, it's not that bad to see it once.
Right.
But you spend any time on YouTube, you see the same ads like 30,000 times. Like the stupid one for the midnight edition of whatever that Nissan car is. I have seen it so many times. I'm going to rip my eyeballs out every time it comes on. I chose the ones where I thought I did. Choose the one where you can skip them after 5 seconds.
Yep,
so
that's what we have. Yeah.
Now, for us, we should earn ad revenue if enough people watch.
Well, technically, I mean, there's a little revenue section and it shows what's going in there, but the amounts are pretty darn small. And just for reference, like a place like Film Cow, I enjoy, Charlie the Unicorn, right? His videos get hundreds of thousands of views, and he's like, because of the new revenue structure, he makes like $300 a month off of a video that gets like 200,000 views.
Right.
So with our 200 to 300 views, we're not making any money. But Steve very graciously was basically wondering, if he sits through the whole video instead of skipping it, do we get anything extra? Is that any benefit to us, or can he just skip it after 5 seconds and it's not going to make any difference to our bottom line?
I don't think it makes any difference.
Go ahead and skip them. We're not pulling any money.
Dude, if it doubled the amount of money I got from you, I would still say skip it, because I'm gonna skip it for. And I watch quite a bit of YouTube these days because it's easy and it's accessible, and there's a lot of content on it nowadays that I care about, or at least I'm interested enough to watch. And mostly YouTube helps me fall asleep, right? I mean, I like put on something brainless in the background, somebody playing a video game or something like that, and it's like, oh, I'm out.
Now, if you're someone who's interested in helping the podcast financially, skip the video.
Yeah.
Come to AV Rant. Over on the right-hand side, there's a button that says support the podcast. Give us $1 for a month or for a year or something like that. That is way more money than we will get from you.
And one of these days, I will get the
YouTube,
Patreon thing up and going. I
don't
know
we really should. People like the Patreon.
I know. The problem is writing all the words. Yeah. There's so many words that they want you to write and then like make a video and stuff. Anyway. All right. Gibbs. which is a college campus around here. But anyways, this is a person. Gibbs. Assuming physical size is not a concern, is the Ascend Acoustic Sierra Tower with RAL always better than the Sierra 2s? Or are there any performance aspect of the Sierra 2 bookshelves that is actually superior to the towers? Assuming physical size is not a concern.
Right. Yeah,
okay.
I mean, obviously the bookshelf is physically smaller, so if that's the only thing that will physically fit in your space, that's an advantage. It's cheaper. It's cheaper.
That's true. I mean, I believe that I've had so many more issues placing tower speakers in small rooms, whereas I've almost never had a problem with bookshelf speakers in large rooms. You know what I mean? It's just something about tower speakers, in my experience, has been that they're just a little bit harder to get to image correctly and stuff like that. I don't know that that'll be the case here, but certainly, I mean, he's saying assuming size is not a concern. I'm wondering if he really means assuming I can afford the big ones.
Well, it's just, like I can place. If you have, like I'm saying, the decision is made for you if you just physically can't fit the towers. But assuming you can fit the towers, then he's like, is there an actual performance benefit to the Sierra 2s in anything? Now, hyper technically, the Sierra 2 bookshelf speakers being that little bit skinnier than the towers, and the ribbon being the little bit skinnier, technically, and Dave has the measurements to back this up, they have ever so slightly wider dispersion. Now, we're talking hairs widths here of wider dispersion, but if you want an objective measurement in which the Sierra 2s exceed the towers in some small way, they do actually have ever so slightly wider horizontal dispersion. Other than that, there's not really any performance benefit.
I guess one of the only other thing I can think of, and I'm really racking my brain over here, is with a bookshelf speaker, you have many more options for heights. And if you have low furniture or high furniture...
Yeah, because it is important to have your ears at the same vertical height as the tweeters of these speakers. They have very narrow vertical dispersion. Both of them have very narrow vertical dispersion.
And I ran into this when I reviewed some speakers that were from Australia, the Cal something. I don't remember. They were awful. But they had tweeters that were very low. And I was like, dude, they were like so low that sitting on the ground is where they image the best.
Okay.
So I think the idea there was that, and I found this out when I got to Australia, there's a lot of this very Scandinavian sort of design, furniture. Very low furniture, very sleek designs. Everything looks like it came from IKEA there. And all the houses are very, it's like the third time I've hit my mic today. What is going on? I never hit my mic. The houses are very boxy and very modern looking and stuff like that. So it made sense that the tweeter was that low because I think in most of those households, but if you buy an American speaker, the tweeters are going to be much higher. So you have the option with a bookshelf speaker of adjusting that height a lot easier, especially in the downwards direction. You can always raise a tower speaker, but it's a lot easier to maneuver a bookshelf speaker.
Yeah, in all other ways, the towers, they play louder, they can handle more power, they're a little bit more resolving, they have that dedicated mid-range driver and a larger ribbon tweeter, so they're that slightly bit more resolving. Yeah, that's usually you'd opt for the towers if you can afford them and fit them.
Right. Yeah. Ilango. Okay, a friend of Ilango's is building a new house, and the AV vendor the builder uses will be installing a projector and a 120-inch screen in the basement. Ilango's friend doesn't watch movies. I fail to believe that that's even possible. I'm sorry. I would like to meet this person who does not watch movies. How can you not watch movies? Have you seen some of the movies that have come out? They're really good. Could you just watch a movie?
Let's replace that with it's not a priority then.
You cannot watch movies. That's insanity. That's like saying I don't breathe air or I don't like bacon. Do vegans like bacon? They just refuse to admit it. Delicious. There was a bacon plant, that would be their favorite plant. So there you go. Along those friend doesn't watch movies, only TV and sports. There's movies on TV, so shut up. All right. There's only one row of seats, and 1080p is fine. There's no light control planned. However, there will be an ambient light. So there is a projector in the screen that we would recommend for. Is there a projector in the screen we would recommend for this situation? The budget for the projector is about $1,000 to $2,000, and $500 to $1,000 for the screen. If we could keep both the costs to $2,500, they'd be even happier. All dollar amounts are Canadian.
Yes, makes a difference.
Does make a difference because your dollar ain't worth nothing these days.
That's right.
In the toilet. Also, the equipment vendor is Gibby Electronics, so the choices would be from what they offer. Okay, so what? I don't know what Gibby Electronics offers, so I'll be no help on that front. But that Epson 37, 39, I can't remember which one I reviewed.
You have the 3700 that you had.
Was a light cannon. It was a very nice projector, and that thing gets stupid bright. So if you have no light control, I think that line, the 3000 line from them, seems to be one that is very, very bright. That would be and I can't believe that if they sell projectors, they don't have Epson in there someplace.
So I really like Gibby's overall. They're a great place to buy AV receivers. They're a great place to buy TVs. They're really nice people, knowledgeable people. So I really like Gibby's. However, when it comes to projectors and screens, their selection's kind of small. It doesn't seem to be the thing they focus on. Now, I'm basing that off of their website because I don't live in Ontario where their store is based, so I've never been to their physical location. Maybe they sell and have access to way more products than they sell through their website. That's entirely possible. But on their website, they only sell Sony for projectors, and they only sell Grand View for the projection screens. That's all that's on their website. So maybe working with them directly, they have access to more. But if I am limited to what they show on their website, I can't really I would point you at the Sony HW45, really nice projector. 2200 lumens would be nice to get potentially even brighter than that, but that might be sufficient. But it's $2,700 Canadian, $2,000 American, but our
why does it have to come from Gibby's? Can't we get it from someplace else?
Well, because his AV vendor, that's the builder, works alongside Gibby's, so they work with Gibby's. Now, Grand View is one of those installation screen companies, so the price that you see typically includes installation.
Right.
So they look like a horrible value if you're just buying the screen for yourself, but if it includes installation, it's not quite so bad. That's why he was even thinking $1,000 for a 120-inch screen, right?
Right.
So that's okay, but again, on their website, they have a limited selection, so I don't really know. I'm certain they can get, obviously other sizes and screens from Grand View if they're actually doing the installation. So if I'm strictly going by what's on the website, Sony has a VPL EW315. It's WXGA, in fact. It's not even that. It's 1280 by 800, so it's a 16 by 10 aspect ratio. That's the bright, kind of nice, not too loud one that fits within your budget.
Right.
I have two solutions. Solution number one, you're working directly with Gibby's, and hopefully they have access to a lot more products than what is on their website. Entirely possible. It'd be weird if they couldn't get a hold of an Epson projector. No. That's pretty easy. As far as screens, like I say, the Grand View screen isn't bad if it includes installation. If it doesn't include installation, that's extra. Terrible value. So solution number two is your friend buys the products himself and has Gibby's install it. They charge an installation fee, but you just buy the products yourself. In which case, you can get more for less money. So I agree with Tom. Instead of the 3,700, again, our Canadian dollar makes that not a great value. You can still get the 3,500, which is actually replaced by the 3,700. So it's an older model, but they're virtually identical. 3,500 is about $1,500 Canadian. So it's within the budget you wanted. Super bright, very flexible in terms of where you can place. It's got lens shift and lots of zoom range and all the rest of it. Not the quietest projector ever, but you need lots of light. So 3,500 from Epson, great choice. If you want to pay even less, if you want to pay $1,000, the Epson, again, sticking with Epson, the 2040 is a pretty good, bright, small projector. The thing is, it has no lens shift and extremely small zoom range. If it's being professionally installed, shouldn't be a problem. Right? They should be able to professionally install that thing and make it work, but it's just so you're aware, that's why it costs less. Doesn't have the lens shift, doesn't have much zoom range, and it's also not quite as good in the black levels in that, but it's $1,000 Canadian, 2040, still a very good choice. For the screen, I would go to East Porters. They're the Canadian vendor for IllunaVision. IllunaVision has a very nice screen. So it's fixed frame, $500. And I think it's Elara. Elara, I think that's the name of it.
No, I can't see it.
I'm
I'm
looking
gonna
that
click
up
on
here.
it. I mean, just looking.
In any case, $500 for the 120-inch size fixed frame IllunaVision screen. I'm not seeing the name. I'm not sure why. Now,
IllunaVision high definition.
it is Elara. Elara is the series model, because they have more expensive ones, but there's no need to get that. I'm going to suggest in this situation where it sounds like he's going to be watching it during the day. You said there's not light control. There's ambient light in the room. This is a situation where a gray screen does make sense.
Right.
Because
slightly better black levels.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes people talk about ambient light rejection and stuff like that. I'm not so much into that. Where gray makes sense is when you want black to look blacker. Because black can only ever be as black as the ambient light level in your room. That's black. That the projector is turned off completely. It's black. Whatever you see on the screen, that's what your black is. So if you're going to have light and ambient light at all times, it makes sense to get a gray screen in this case.
Right.
So $500 for the 120-inch size. East Porters also sells Epson projectors at good prices. So you could buy everything from East Porters and then just have Gibby's install it, or talk to Gibby's, say, hey, can you get a hold of these Canadian products? Because they are, and they should probably be able to. So
one would
that's
think
the solutions there.
I mean, and let's just say that none of those things work. Like they're like, we won't install it because
we'll only do what we carry.
Yeah, we only do what we carry, that sort of thing. Then just say, fine. You're going to get the stuff yourself anyways. You're going to install it. Believe me, installing a screen is not that hard. Installing a projector is not that hard. You have them install all and run the HDMI cable.
Run all the wires and everything,
Run all the wires, put the mount up there or whatever, the shelf or whatever you're going to get. You talk to us beforehand. Make sure you get what projector you're going to get. We tell you how far away it needs to be. Or you go to projectorcentral.com and you can figure it out yourself. It's not that hard. And Bob's your uncle. It's done.
Yeah,
so
I will mention IllunaVision with that Elara screen. There are two versions of the gray screen. One is a 1.1 gain, one is a 1.8 gain. And you might be going, oh, the 1.8 gain, higher gain, might be more ambient light rejecting. Avoid it. It hotspots like crazy. Yeah, you don't want the 1.8, get the 1.1. You're going to have lots of light if you go with the Epson 3500. That'd be my top choice. So $2,000 all in, plus tax, of course. But $2,000 all in, we're certainly within the budget you specified, and that'll be great performing products.
Nathan has a 12 by 17 by 8 foot room and it's sealed, so he's only dealing with about 1,600 cubic feet. He already owns 2 Rhythmic F15 HP subs. On HP means high power.
They do.
Oh,
and 15 means 15-inch.
He loves their extension, but they're overkill in terms of output for a smaller room, and being 20-inch cubes, they're also physically a bit large and cumbersome, I guess. So what I really like it to be is 4 small subwoofers, one in each corner, but without giving up extension, without breaking the bank. The SVS SB 1000 are a nice size and price, but going by SVS's published measurements, they don't dig as low as what he's used to with his F15 HPs. And the PB 1000s have the same nice price, and they dig lower, but they almost certainly have more than enough output. But they aren't a whole lot smaller than his current subs, so he isn't interested in he isn't completely convinced on those. Are there any options out there in a similar price range that offer the smaller size of the SB1000, the deeper extension of the PB1000? Can I ask a question? Why do we have to have 4 subs in this room?
Oh, because he's going for it. He's going for it. He's like, he had the 2 subs, midpoints of the 2 side walls. He's like, oh, that was really nice. If I'm gonna go smaller, I'm gonna go 4 subs. That's what he's got in mind.
But okay, I just want to reiterate: going 4 subs doesn't get you any more extension.
No, it doesn't get you any more extension.
Just so that we're all on the same page here, buying more subwoofers does not get you more extension. Get you slightly more output.
Slightly. It's not even nearly as much as you would think, but it gets you a little bit.
As much as you would think. It gives you slightly more output, and but the benefit is it gives you very even bass across more places within your home theater. Yeah. Now, most home theaters will be just fine with 2. So if the problem here is that you want to get the best extension, similar extension and similar performance, but in a smaller box, then you should be looking at 2 and spending more on them than getting 4 and not having as much budget.
Like 2 SB2000s?
I think that would be my recommendation. Rather than getting 4.
The question, though, is placement. That's the question.
He's already got these things placed. If he could put these things in there, Rob, you can put
but he's like, he can't really. He's going to a smaller room, and he can't really place the 2 F-15 HPs. That's the problem.
Anywhere on here. That's what I'm saying. But in his new room, all he's got to do is have similar placement. Opposing corners, or it's a small room. Opposing corners, opposing walls, whatever, mirrored. I think 2 subs of the SB2000 varieties, or PC2000s. PC2000s. Come on. Crush it in there.
Oh, yes. No, I mean, output isn't the problem. Output isn't the problem for any of these.
I know.
A pair of SB1000s has plenty of output for 1,600 cubic feet.
How low do these things go? That are these so
the SB2000s are rated at negative 3 dB at what, 23 hertz, something like that. But they actually do drop off more steeply than just a straight sealed sub. They've got that DSP processing, and they put an extra filter on the bottom there, so they drop off pretty quick.
What are we talking about? SB2000s?
SB1000s.
Oh, SB. You said SB2000s. Okay.
I'm sorry. I misspoke there. No, the SB1000s.
23 hertz is what you're saying.
Yeah.
I'm asking the rhythmic ones that he has. Where do they go? Like 18?
Oh, the F-15s that he has right now?
Yeah.
Oh, they go down to like 12 hertz.
Oh, geez. You're never getting 12 hertz, do you?
But that's with the sealed extension, right? The 12 decibels per octave roll off.
Yeah.
But they go way down there. They're rated at 14 hertz, right? And
that's what I'm saying. I think for the money, he could get the SB2000s or the PC2000s, 2 of them.
Yeah, 2 SB2000s certainly wouldn't be a bad choice.
You're going to
diagonally opposite corners instead of all 4.
Yeah.
Sure.
That would be me. You're going to save money than buying 4 subs.
Yeah.
I don't think he's ever going to be happy with the extension of, if he's not going to spend the money for it, to 4 subs. I mean, what's the other, JL Audio maybe? They have those $1,000 E subs, right?
But they're way more expensive.
No, the E subs, the E ones.
Yeah, the E ones are still pretty pricey.
What? They're still $1,000. I thought they were like $1,000.
But anyway, I'll just mention, since you already know Rhythmic, you already like your F-15 HPs. They do have an L12. That's sort of one of their smallest, least powerful and expensive sealed 12-inch ones. It's a little bit bigger than the SB1000. It's about an inch bigger in each direction, so it's about 14.5 by 14.5 by 15.5. So it's slightly larger than the SB1000, but it has Rhythmic's whole thing of lots of variable tuning. You can tune that thing to keep playing all the way down to about 14 hertz. It's just going to be quite quiet, but quiet is fine. Because you could potentially have 4 of them in a tiny room and corner loaded, so I really don't think the output. So they have the ability to play really low, those L12s. Now they're $540 shipping included, so they're $40 more than the SB1000s all in. So that's not, obviously same price class, right?
Right.
So if you're just dead set on 4 very small subwoofers, 1 in each corner, the L12s from Rhythmic, who you already know and like, are an option.
Yeah. I'd go with 2 subs, though, honestly. I would, but that's just me. All right. He uses his Marantz SR6010, which has obviously multi-QXT32 with sub-EQHT for his dual subs. It was a straightforward process. Just run the program and automatically level match the 2 subs and independently set their distances. But for 4 subwoofers, are there any special setup steps he'd need to take? Yeah. Which is another reason why you should just get the 2 subs. Anyways. My advice is the best advice so far. Anyways, if you're gonna do 2 subs now, you're gonna do 2 subs,
if you're gonna do 4 subs,
4 subs, I mean, then you're gonna have 2 plugged into each outlet, and those 2, whichever 2 they are, if you can have them be similar distances from your seat, your main seat, that would be best. So chances are, from the main seat, the 2 front subs are going to be similarly distanced from you. The 2 back subs will be similarly distanced from you. So you're going to level match the subs, and you can do that using the program that's in there. You just unplug one sub, let one play, then use the knob on it to level match it a little bit lower than whatever it says. 70 should be 75, but it's like 73 or 72. And then do the same thing with the other one, so that they're both at the same level, then plug them both in at the same time and let Odyssey do its thing with them. And the same thing with the other 2. That's the only extra step that you really need to do. Now, if they're not physically if like your room is a trapezoid or something like that, and nothing is the same distance, then you might have to do some phase adjustments after Odyssey does all this stuff and all that. But
yeah, given what you've described, it sounds like it's a rectangle of a room.
Yeah.
And you're talking about 4 subs, 1 in each corner. So I'd imagine the sub that's in your front left and the sub that's in your front right are very much the same distance from your primary seat in the middle. And the sub that's in the back left and the sub that's in the back right are the same distance from your seat. So all you're doing is taking subwoofer output 1, splitting that to your 2 front subs, and subwoofer output 2, splitting that to your 2 back subs.
Easy peasy. Buy 2 subs. All right, Jason. Jason's replaced his Velodyne CT100 sub with an SVS PB1000. I hope you built the box. Does he need to do another subwoofer crawl, or can he use the same placement as the old sub and call it a day? The SVS definitely plays lower frequencies than the Velodyne ever produced, so does that have an impact on room placement? Oh, only in every possible way. So the lower that sub plays, especially since you've never heard him before, you have no idea if this is the best placement. Will it be literally, you have no idea. Will you have to do subwoofer crawl again? Yes, absolutely. Your exciting room modes you didn't know you had, and it may be that yes, this is the best placement to get you from 80 hertz down to 35 hertz or whatever the Velodyne played to 30 hertz. But once you get into the 20 hertz range, which this thing is going to dip into, and you're like, oh god, this is terrible over here now. and it's going to make enough of a difference that you're going to be like, okay, no, for real though, we have to move this up. So you're going to have to do the subwoofer crawl again.
Yep. That's the case. Now, I mean, there's always the thing of if you literally only have 2 places where this subwoofer can realistically live.
Now that you got this massive sub that you didn't put the box for.
Yeah, then okay, you try it in position 1, you try it in position 2, right? I mean, that's
call it a day.
But if you have, I mean, some people do, right? Some people have an entire wall or 2 walls where the subwoofer could live. Then the subwoofer crawl is much faster because that means the subwoofer goes where your seat was, and you move along the walls until you find the best location. And the best location is where a bass sweep sounds the most even throughout, especially looking for a spot where there are no gigantic dips as the sweep plays. That's particularly what you're looking for. If there's a few humps, you can level those out with EQ.
Odyssey would fix that.
That's
stuff.
okay. But you definitely want to avoid anything that has a big dip, and absolutely could be the case. Your old sub was not playing down to 20 hertz. Maybe there's a null at 25 hertz that you never knew about. So just swapping one for the other, you could definitely have some pitfalls there.
Yeah. Jeremy is in the very early stages of his home theater design. He's considering viewing angles and screen size options. The wall he's considering for the screen could fit up to a 135-inch screen. You say that, but did you think about your center channel? Just going to throw that out there.
Physically, that's what.
But at his 10-foot seeing distance, 135 inches would be 52.2 degree field of view. Is it crazy to consider that big of a screen? Should he go down to 100 inches in a 39.9 degree field of view? Which is much closer to the THX recommendation. All right, Jeremy. No one can answer this question for you, sir. I think 52.2 is insane. I think that's very big. But you may not. How do you know?
Some people like that.
That's right. We've had more than one person on this podcast ask us questions and end up with that being what they like. What do? It's very easy. Go to a theater, right? And we've seen this before. It's actually what I've said before many times is you paste yourself down to the screen, then you paste yourself from one end of the screen to the other. You count the number of steps. Someone very astutely pointed out that most of these places have ceiling tiles. Count the tiles directly above you to the screen, then count the number of tiles from one side of the screen over to the other side of the screen. That is your ratio.
Yes.
That's what you want.
Yeah, it's the width of the screen to the distance from the screen to you. That's the ratio you're looking for.
Once you figure that out, then you figure out that you're sitting 10 feet away. Then you know what your horizontal distance is. Now all you have to do is figure out what your vertical one is, or just search Projector Central or whatever
you figured out the width, so divide the width by 16 and then multiply that by 9, and now you have the height. So,
there you go.
Yeah. And then Pythagoras, right?
Yep.
A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So there you go. That would give you your diagonal. Yeah.
And then
52.
get the screen size that's a little bit bigger than that one. That's what I would say. Whatever that standard screen size, like really if it's 118 inches diagonal,
it can
you get
be
the 120.
unpleasant to look at a screen that is larger than you like to look at. That can be unpleasant.
Just a couple of inches, I'm saying. I mean, but if it's like, 90, if it's like 102, then you go with 100.
Right. So a 52-degree field of view, it's not crazy. It's not what I would prefer. Yeah. If I were sitting 10 feet away from a screen, I'd go for 110 inch. That would be my preference, but that's me, and I know what I like. So you might like larger, you might like smaller. There's no wrong answer to that. This is your screen, this is your theater. But yeah, figure out that ratio, distance from you to the screen versus the width of the screen, and go from there.
Ian's theater gets quite hot during the summer. He likes to have gatherings with quite a few friends over, so he's thinking of setting up a system for outdoor movie nights. He has a concrete block wall where he can set up a projection screen. The wall is much wider than is tall, so he was thinking a 2.35 to 1 aspect ratio would look best. He's thinking he'd make the screen 160 inches wide, which would be 174-inch diagonal, 2.35 to 1 screen, or 184 inches, 16 by 9.
Now, I did just want to update. Ian actually wrote to us just before the podcast started.
Yeah.
And he was like, maybe I'll go for a 16 by 9 screen after all. Yeah. So he did update us with that. Now, the rest of it still applies, but so we might be going for a 16 by 9.
Okay. So starting with the screen, the place to go for inexpensive DIY outdoor screen material seems to be Carl's Place. They offer DIY screen materials with finished black vinyl edges and mounting grommets already installed. They also offer framing kits, both hanging and freestanding, a number of different screen materials. They're offered in a number of standard sizes, but there are some large jumps in those available sizes. Their FAQ says they can be custom sizes, though. What should be the plan here? Ian wants to keep the price as low as possible. He'll be using existing equipment that he already owns for everything else, so the outdoor screen is the big purchase. Mm-hmm. Custom size versus standard available size. What material? Make his own frame or buy one of their kits? And could a freestanding frame allow him to make the screen acoustically transparent with the speakers behind the screen? All right. That's a lot of things he just said.
So that last part, the acoustically transparent screen, I would not attempt that outside.
So is this thing going to live out here forever? Because I think that's a terrible idea.
No. Because he's talking speakers and stuff also are actually from inside. So this is all
he's going to drag it all outside.
Yeah, he's going to drag it all outside for movie night and then bring it all back inside.
I mean, there's like those inflatable screens and everything that you can get these days. And there's ones that you can tension and stuff. Like Clint's got one of those. That's like it's massive. I don't know how big it is. It's 200,
He was thinking inches. What he could do, though, is just basically secure because this is a grommet system that Carl's Place uses. So he could just secure the hooks into that wall because it's just a block wall. So he can have the hooks for the grommets in the wall and then just put the screen up when he wants to. Are people
seeing this image? For those of you that are listening, there's no covering. This is just literally
open backyard.
There's a tree, like maybe slightly over it. Can't really see the one that's behind it on the picture here.
Yeah.
So it's something he's just going to set up, put up and take down. Okay. All right. So he's going to put the grommets in, and then he's going to store it somehow in his whatever, and that's it. I personally, and I've already said to them this podcast today, I don't like custom screen sizes. They are ridiculously expensive. I mean.
In this case, though, the jumps in sizes that they offer are kind of ridiculous.
I'm going to click on this link here so I can see what you're talking about here.
Because I mean, this all is going to get into light output capability of his projector and things like that. Now he's sort of settled on the idea because one of their standard screen sizes is 16 feet wide and 9 feet tall, not 16 by 9, obviously, right?
Right.
That is a monstrous screen. That is over 220 inches diagonal.
It's a big one.
This
is a big backyard, though. I mean,
it's a big backyard, but I mean that is the entire height of that wall, and the projector light output that you'd need in that situation. It's getting nuts. I wouldn't. I know it's tempting to just go enormous.
There's a 165-inch diagonal one right here for $200. I'm looking at,
but that's not as big as he wants.
I thought he said 185 is what he was wanting, right?
Yeah, and then it jumps to like
214.
Yeah, well over 200. That's a crazy gap in their standard sizes.
Yeah, but what's the difference? I mean, that difference in price is like $40 though. Not even that.
Yeah, of the screen, but think about the projector you need to jump from 165 to 215.
No, I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying.
That's
But
the problem.
so you're saying just go with the 140 inch.
I'm saying get a custom screen size.
Well, how much is the price difference for the custom screen size?
Like $20 extra.
No.
Yeah.
You're lying. Really?
No, because they churn these things out. They're all over it, man.
For $20. Okay, fine, whatever. The
difference is you can't return it. That's the difference. You can't return it.
The last time I priced any of these things, it was like stupid. It was like $1,000.
Yeah, but that's like a full motorized installation screen. You build a custom one of those, it's way more work.
It's the same.
This is a piece of fabric with some grommets in it. That's all it is. They literally just cut it at a different size and do the same process. It's
well, if it's only 20, yeah, then fine. But you're still looking for what, 185 inches? Is that what I remember reading?
Yeah, 185 inches diagonal,
still
more or
a
less.
pretty monstrous projector.
That is a monstrous screen, but like the 200 inches is like the cutoff, man. You go bigger than 200 inches, you need like a 5,000 lumen projector all of a sudden. It starts going nuts.
See, my problem is this. Let me put it to you this way, dude. How far away? Once again, we got to talk about how far we're going to be sitting from these things.
Yeah.
I know how big of a wall you have. That is really not the image. That's not the issue here. Yes, you have a big wall. Yes, you have a big backyard. You are going to have movie nights outside. How far away from the screen are you going to sit? Because that's not only going to determine how big your screen is going to be or how bright your projector has to be, but how loud your speakers have to be and how much sound you're going to be pumping into the neighborhood so that you can hear it at a reasonable volume. Because when you can hear it at a reasonable volume, when you're sitting, well, how far you got to sit from a 184-inch screen, 185-inch screen, however far you're going to be sitting from that, everybody else for like 5-6 houses away are hearing the exact same thing or very close to it. I mean, it's going to be a lot of sound. So, maybe think about the size
for
of the screen.
Multiple reasons. I mean, I can't recommend going for the screen that is 16 feet wide.
Yeah,
I can't recommend doing that. I don't think it's a good idea.
Yeah.
For multiple reasons. Anyway, for the screen materials, go for one of the PVC-based screens. Don't go for anything else. Don't go for fabric. Don't go for silver-coated. Don't go for just a PVC-based screen.
Right.
Now, they offer that in white and gray, right?
You want white. You're going to be watching
just get the white.
You're going to be watching this at night, right? I mean, I can't imagine he's not going to be watching.
And he's like, oh, if I get the gray screen, could that mean maybe I can start watching earlier in the day? No, sunlight will wash out anything.
Yeah.
The gray ain't going to make a difference. So
the sun is like a billion lumens.
Yeah. So you got to wait for it to get dark and just get the white PVC screen. That's all you want. The gray ain't going to make a lick of difference outside.
Our major concern is the brightness of the image. He has an Epson 8350. He also has access to a BenQ 1070, but both are rated at 2,000 lumens max. And according to Projector Central's calculator, it goes with initial 160-inch screen width. You get a maximum of 10-foot Lamberts. If you went with one of Carl's Place standard screen sizes, the screen would be even larger, so you get like 8 or 9-foot Lamberts. Is that too dim? I mean, yes.
I mean... So
it's certainly not bright. You would not think you were inside your house watching this or at a movie theater watching it. You would think it's dim. That's what you would think.
If you go to a normal 3D movie, a lot of those are like 4 lumens coming through the glasses by the time it reaches your eye. And what's everybody's complaint about that? Too dim.
Yeah.
Now 8 or 9 lumens is watchable. It's viewable. It's not what I would call like impressive. You'll see it. It's fine. You'll be able to watch the movie at 8 or 9 lumen or 8 or 9.
It would be. To me, in my mind, this would be similar to watching a normal screen, a normal TV or whatever, when there's lights on in the room.
Yeah.
It's going to be kind of washed out a little bit. Can you see it? Yeah. Can you read it? Yeah. It's a little bit washed out. That's what it's going to look like. Is that what you want? Because I'm guessing he doesn't.
Now, I will say, even though they're both rated at 2,000 lumens max, the BenQ 1070 can be much brighter with something that resembles decent color.
Yeah.
All right. That 8350, once you calibrate it to something resembling decent color, it's down to like 700 lumens. It's a big drop off. Now he discovered himself Projector Central's calculator actually does let you change the format, because he was like that the math doesn't work out. Even if it's only 1,000 lumens coming out, it still should be a slightly more than 10-foot Lamberts on a 160-inch width screen. And Projector Central actually does account for putting it into theater mode, essentially.
Yeah.
So the BenQ 1070, if you put it in its bright cinema mode, can genuinely put out about 1,500 lumens, right? So the 160-inch width that you initially thought of, that works out to exactly 100 square feet. So if you divide the number of lumens by the number of square feet, you get the foot Lamberts. So you're talking 15 foot Lamberts in that bright cinema mode from the BenQ 1070. That's doable. But like I say, you start going any bit, especially go over 200 inches diagonal, it's too dim. So your initial screen size, actually, I think is fine. Instead of being 2.35 to 1, I'm fine with it being 16 by 9. But the widest I would go is 14 feet wide. That is the absolute widest I would go, would be 14 feet wide. So I'll put it to you that way. And out of those two, use the 1070. It's the brighter one with something resembling accurate colors.
For audio, he tried bringing his RBH Impression Series R55 Ti towers outside and powered them with a Zemotiva UPA 700 amp. Even though he lives close to the freeway, he was pleasantly surprised by how good they sounded and how they were able to play loud enough to be enjoyable despite the ambient noise. Should he make an effort to also bring his sensor and surround speakers outside? And what about his HSU VTF 15 Mark II? I wouldn't. I mean, I gotta be honest with you.
That's a lot of schlepping.
That's a lot of schlepping. It's a lot of wires that you're gonna have to. I mean, if it were me, I would just put up the mains and call it a day. They're gonna be super wide apart anyways, so everybody's gonna be sitting in the phantom center zone anyways.
Yeah.
This center doesn't. The surrounds, it would be nice. It would be nice to have the surrounds. I don't know that it would be super worth it. It will enhance the experience? I believe it would. I'll bet you what you're going to do is you're going to bring the whole 5.1 system out there and the screen and everything, and you're going to do that once. Yeah.
And every time after that, you're going to bring out 2 speakers.
Yeah.
I think that's what's going to happen.
Now, the subwoofer, is it going to add something? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the 15,
it's a
VTF 15, that's a big honk, and so it'll add some bass, all right. Your neighbors might complain.
Yeah. I think that they're already going to be irritated. I mean, even if they're over there, at some point, someone's going to be mad. And that subwoofer is not going to make you any friends. So you might just want to skip that for right now. So he asks, any other thoughts or ideas about his outdoor movie nights? Yeah, I think we're going to piss some people off. But that's being said, directly next door to my friend's house, there is a screened-in porch with a projector on it. And they watch TV and stuff out there all the time. They keep it at a reasonable volume. They sit awfully close. They're not sitting however far away you're planning on sitting. So it's fine. I think you really, really need to think about practical applications. I hate to quote Jurassic Park, but don't be so busy thinking about whether or not you could that you don't consider whether or not you should. Yeah. Because in real use situations as well, are you absolutely going to drag out all these speakers all this time? Are you going to be sitting that far away?
Are you going to be sitting far enough away that even with those R55 Ti towers that they're going to be able to play loud enough, right?
Or do you have to sit so far away? I mean, are you going to be sitting so far away that screen size makes sense? Maybe you'll end up sitting closer. I mean, how many people you having over with a screen size this big? Thinking like 20, 30 people? Is that like really gonna be?
I mean, it could be, but yeah, like 185-inch screen. Think about that. You're sitting like a minimum of 15 feet away from that, right?
Right.
So my thought on this is put the seats closer and get a smaller screen. That's going to benefit you in multiple ways. It's going to mean the sound is better. It's going to mean you don't have to play it so loud that you're killing your neighbors. It's going to mean it's easier to light with any projector because it's a smaller screen. Put the seats closer. That's my thought on it.
Yeah. So moving to his indoor theater, Ian is getting the Atmos itch. First up, based on some of our previous advice, he installed 2 speakers on each side wall as his surround channels so that he would have better coverage for his multiple rows of seats. He managed to snag a pair of RBH Pole Impression Series surround speakers, though, even though they're discontinued. So now he's thinking of maybe the bipoles could handle the surround channels on their own. Then he could repurpose his 2 pairs of bookshelf speakers as top front and top rear Atmos speakers. Do we think that's a good idea? So rather than having 2 surround speakers, he's thinking of having 1 bipole speaker.
That's the thought he's got in mind. Yep. And kind of splitting the difference, right? So instead of having,
I'm trying to see these pictures. This is the first. I didn't get this far in the question list when we were.
Yeah. Instead of having a regular bookshelf wall-mounted speaker that's more or less in line with each of his 2 rows of seats, he'd have a single bipole speaker that's in between the 2 rows, so that its angled faces are.
That'd be fine for your front row of seats. Your second
yeah.
row of seats is they're going to be able to know that that's in front of them and not to the side.
A little bit compromised for the second row. That's
how
true.
much do you care about that second row of seats?
Yes.
If you don't care that much about the second row of seats, then it's fine.
Yeah.
If you do care about the second row of seats, then you shouldn't do it.
I agree with all of that, Tom.
Okay, I scrolled. So wait a second. Okay, so I do need to scroll to get to the next part of the question. Okay, there's a lot of scrolling going on right now. Oh, I scrolled too far. So his Atmos receiver is a Denon X4100W, which can process a maximum of 9 channels. Does it make more sense in this setup to do a 7.1.2 or 7.1 or 5.1.4? Well, Rob has already stated that he believes that if you're going to put 2 speakers above you, you should put 4. So Rob's going to say 5.2.4. We should have 2 subwoofers in here.
It's a big room.
It is a big room.
But it is a VTF 15, so, he got a big sub. Yeah.
I wish I could see this a little bit better. I'm not really understanding what I'm seeing.
I mean, he was saying that, now he mentioned he normally sits in the front row, so that kind of answers that question. And he's like, the surround back speakers are like way back there for where he sits. So all of it to me says when you're limited to 9 speakers, I'd go 5.2.4. That'd be my vote.
I get behind that. Is this the last question? No, we have up to 15, right?
There's 3 more. So up
We're
to you,
not
man.
doing 3 more. I've got to go. I got to get really early tomorrow. All right, so we're going to end there with Grant from New Zealand. We'll see you next week. Kevin and Charles, it looks like.
Yeah.
We will see you guys next week. So that's going to be, I can't even scroll up.
Yeah, see, normally we think our listeners of the week. We didn't do that segment because we didn't have any donations this week. And somebody did mention they talked us up to one of the retailers that they bought something from, but that came in today. So we sort of cut things off on whatever reaches us by Sunday.
That's
so,
right.
We're
going to get your question answered. All you have to do is ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. And all the rest of the contact information is at the beginning, because I'm not going to do it over and over again, because I can't do it at the end. My brain is addled from all of the stuff that we've already done, and I mess it up every single time, so it's just pointless. So we should talk about movies or something at the end. That's what we should do. We should talk about movies. That should be the thing that we do. Like the off-topic stuff that we always go off
at the beginning.
At the beginning, we talk about
and waste time.
And I know. So we'll see. This Reaper program seems to be still working.
It's good.
I'm terrified of the export portion of the evening. That's because that's the part I'm going to be worried about. I got to be dead honest with you. All right. So any other movies we want to talk about before we finish this thing? I saw
Transformers.
It's hot garbage, right? Hot garbage?
No one else should see Transformers. And thankfully in North America, many fewer people have seen this Transformers than the last Transformers. But the rest of the world is like, yeah, Transformers. So they're probably going to get another one.
I think that whoever's doing the translation is doing a fantastic job of making this movie seem more or these movies in general seem more interesting than they are.
Here's what's wrong with.
I don't understand how this is happening.
Here's what's wrong with Transformers. I hate every single one of the Transformers. Every single one of them is the most juvenile, crass, annoying, ridiculous monstrosity. At least they gave them more distinct colors now, because in the first one you could barely tell them apart. But They are horrible. I said in Transformers 4, the only Transformer that I even remotely cared about was Optimus Prime. Well, they assassinated his character in this one.
Right.
So now there are no Transformers that I care about whatsoever. And there was even one moment when one of the Transformers said, "Oh, that guy, he's the most annoying Transformer out there." I'm like, "No, you all are. You all are the most annoying. They're terrible. I hate them." And I loved the Transformers cartoon as a kid. I was the perfect age. I loved the toys. The original toys were fantastic with the metal parts and everything. Yeah. Awesome toys. Loved the show. I love the Transformers. It's a parable, It's fathers and sons. That's what it's about. Michael Bay doesn't understand that at all. It's awful. It's an awful movie. It's offensively bad. Ugh. So in case you were thinking that I can never hate a movie, because I've said, I wasn't that down on Man of Steel, Suicide Squad. I was even kind of positive on it. In case you were thinking, oh, Rob just loves everything. No. So there you go. That's my review.
How could the We Love Movies podcast like Suicide Squad more than... I will say...
They gave it more stars, that's all I know. I mean, they hadn't seen it yet. Maybe in retrospect they would turn that around or something.
I don't know. I did not love the end of the finale, if you will, of Wonder Woman. I did not love that.
Sure, that's been the major criticism every critic has leveled at. The big fight at the end. And
I had a couple.
Spoilers. At the end of a superhero movie, there's a big fight at the end.
I know there's a spoiler right there.
We ruined that for someone.
We ruined it for you. Yeah.
No,
I did not love that. That whole everything that was totally anticlimactic to me. And I talked to Rob about this after the podcast last week. There were a couple other things that kind of bothered me about the movie. The most major, I think, the one that seems to be I mean, she's Amazonian, right? They're supposed to be like these tall, intimidating, strong women. She's like shorter than everybody. I mean, she's like the shortest person in the freaking movie. I'm like, she's not an Amazon. I mean, I'm not saying that she had to be 17 feet tall or anything. I'm just saying she should be tall. And don't tell me you can't do it because she's not tall. I don't even know how tall she really is. I don't know. Maybe Chris Klein is huge. Chris Pine, it's not Chris Klein, is hugely tall. I don't know. All I know is she should have been taller than him. That's for sure him. Everybody else, okay, whatever. They're all whatever. But she should be taller than most people in that movie. That bothered me. At one point, I was like, why is she looking up at everybody? How is she so short? She's Amazon. She's supposed to be tall. Made her from clay. What did they do? Make a 5'6" clay person? No. Make a big one.
Well, she's taller than you and I, so.
That's not saying anything. I am short. I am 5'7" and shrinking. Gravity has not been kind. All right. For AV Rant, I'm Tom Andry.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.